there stood one of the top 3 hunter institutions in the world named Valhalla. Every year, a large number of warriors tried to join, striving to carry the weight of this prestigious name on their shoulders. There was only a 1 in 500 chance of getting in, and of those who succeeded, only 150 graduated fully. The competition was about to begin. 2 boys were seen engaged in an intense physical fight. Many people were brawling in closed rooms. A gray-haired man watched everything from a superior position in the distance. He was the senior combat instructor, Lee Sang-cheol. He was impressed because this year there were many candidates. Suddenly, the director Yu Min-jun descended upon the scene, a descendant of the Yushin family. Lee Sang-cheol commented that it was common to see top-ranking admissions and asked if he had come to observe his niece's performance. Yu Min-jun affirmed, stating that the Yushin family held great expectations for So-yeon. The name of the girl made him pause and thought. She was part of one of the 5 most prestigious families in Korea. Typically, people learn to handle mana at the age of 10 during elementary school, and by 13, they could already channel it into their swords. By 16, if an example duel were held against someone from the Yushin family, they would always win. The senior instructor then asked his friend what made that girl so special. He replied that the Yushin family communicated with a constellation guardian, as unbelievable as it seemed. But that was exactly what he had been looking for. In Korea, there were 5 generations, each family tied to a constellation guardian with unique powers, usually granting blessings and protection to hunters. The Yushin clan had the god of the sword, the Jangsan group had the divine spirit, the Jin Choi family held the martial arts deity, along with the god of fists from the Osean organization. And lastly, the John family had the divine archer. The 5 members of these families carried the protection of the constellations, wielding more power and talent than others. However, good communication was different from a simple blessing, as speaking with the Star Guardian was almost like forming a direct contract. The senior instructor remarked that they had a true genius there, prompting a question from Yu Min-jun. He asked if his niece's match had started, to which he was told it hadn't, but he had arrived just in time as it was set to begin in 30 seconds. They discussed how, down below where visibility was better, there were many reporters and guild recruiters. Yu Min-jun jokingly asked Lee Sang-cheol to put it on the big screen since he was a senior instructor. He too was curious to watch. Soon So-yeon appeared on a huge screen. She was the eldest daughter of the Yushin family, and she was battling Kim Joo-hyuk, a 17-year-old boy, who seemed very relaxed and likely to give up once he realized who the girl truly was. The boy looked like a complete fool. The senior instructor and his friend felt nothing extraordinary coming from him. The countdown soon began. The boy remained relaxed even with only 2 seconds left before the match started. But just 1 second remaining, the girl already had fire in her eyes. Finally, the signal to begin the battle was given. So-yeon charged at Kim Joo-hyuk boldly. Wielding her massive, sharp sword, she utilized all the skills she had previously mastered. Lee Sang-cheol thought the girl was very young but still knew how to wield a sword firmly and had excellent mana control. Kim Joo-hyuk observed the sword coming toward him. He gave a slight smile and dodged the strike, leaving the onlookers astonished and terrified, because he had won, leaving So-yeon on the ground defeated. He wondered why the girl was so weak, even doubting events 300 years into the future. 3 centuries ago, something had happened at the Tower of Destruction. 2 men were fighting valiantly. The owner, the King of Destruction, Brace, remarked that it had been a great battle, leaving the martial leader Kim Hyen-oh greatly weakened. Brace wore strange blue glasses and had enormous white hair. Kim Hyen-oh agreed that the fight had been excellent. The MC let out a slight chuckle. Kim Hyen-oh became very alert when a panel appeared in front of him. It announced that the Tower of Destruction and its ruler, Brace, had been defeated, halting the world's annihilation. The enormous structure began to crack loudly. Kim Hyen-oh realized the building was collapsing after he had defeated his enemy. He groaned in pain, lamenting that this was supposed to be his moment to live in complete peace. Since childhood, he had endured heavy labor as a hunter to survive, and all the money, fame, and life he had dreamed of were crumbling before him. He knew he should have brought his disciples along, but he reconsidered this thought, because that guy had been the strongest opponent he had ever faced, and everyone could have ended up dying right there. He bids farewell to the world with his hand on his wound, and soon begins to degrade right there. Suddenly, the boy opens his eyes. Kim Hyen-oh had reincarnated into the body of a young man named Kim Joo-hyuk 300 years after the tower's collapse. And the current time of his reincarnation was satisfactory. Even though his physical condition was weak, all his knowledge had remained. He thought that simply adapting to the new body, he could live in peace until the translucent window appeared again, informing him that in 5 years the Tower of Destruction would reappear, giving him that time to prepare. He was angry because that guy had already been defeated. He thought he should have burned Brace's body but couldn't just stand there regretting it for no reason. In that era, the conditions to conquer the tower should be easier, and this time he was determined to live and enjoy life. Something appeared on the panel, leaving him confused again. It mentioned finding lost weapons and memories in the Valhalla Constellation Room on the 3rd underground floor. He realized everything he needed to do at that moment. It would be the 4th day in Valhalla, where the top 10 rankings would be decided. Those who were summoned had to head to the stadium. Kim Joo-hyuk got up excited to go there. All participants had to take their positions. The spectators were quite excited, watching everything. This was the same moment when the senior instructor thought there were too many people compared to last time. He observed everything from above. The newcomer Kim Joo-hyuk was ready to battle. The match would begin in 30 seconds, and his opponent was already in front of him. The eldest son of the Osun family, Oh Se-hyuk, aged 17, was there. He wasn't very good at literature, strategy, or martial arts. However, he had a talent of the others. It was his impressive and strong physique. He could do what others couldn't without mana, and even with little training, he grew significantly stronger. He was born with a top-tier physique that required no effort and was considered a genius for that reason. He stared fearlessly at his opponent with an extremely angry expression. The two were standing in front of each other. Kim Joo-hyuk showed the middle finger and insulted his opponent. This left Oh Se-hyuk furious and enraged. He charged at him, calling him trash. Kim Joo-hyuk thought that with the body he was reincarnated into, he wouldn't win in close combat and didn't know much about his opponent, with strength being the main issue so far. Even though the enemy had superior physical strength, it didn't mean he would win. Oh Se-hyuk tried to deliver a powerful punch to the reincarnated one. He dodged because he had martial arts to enhance his physique, and something very important as well. He landed a massive slap, knocking his opponent down. Oh Se-hyuk was left confused and unsure of what had just happened. Kim Joo-hyuk gave a slight wink with his right eye, and revealed his ability to observe his opponent, landing a precise blow to his opponent's body, who rolled his eyes, blood coming from his mouth, falling unconscious and severely weakened. Kim Joo-hyuk won the battle, saying that if those two abilities weren't in harmony, this outcome would have been impossible. Even though this body was weaker than before, he shouldn't have any problems hunting monsters and being a hunter as he once was. He headed to the exit after annihilating his enemy, leaving everyone who watched the battle perplexed. They commented on how Oh Se-hyuk was knocked out and brought down by such a simple attack. A man in the back thought deeply about all of this in silence. He was the head of the Osun family, the king of fists, Oh Chulshin, very angry at the opinion of those ignorant enough to call the attack simple. Even though his son had only trained his physique, ignoring martial arts, he should have easily dodged that blow. But this time, it was something he couldn't evade. Se-hyuk let his temper get the better of him and just charged at Kim Joo-hyuk. He had even used magic, which he rarely used, to try and end it quickly. But Kim Joo-hyuk tilted his head slightly to dodge. Since he was certain the strike was accurate, he shifted his entire center of gravity forward, making Oh Se-hyuk fly in despair, surprised by the missed punch. His opponent's hand was extended and open at that moment to counterattack. This meant that Kim Joo-hyuk moved faster than Se-hyuk at maximum speed, proving he already had a plan for the battle, and that alone was already a monstrous talent. Oh Chulshin, after processing all of this, remained silent and deep in thought. Unfortunately, many people also recognized the value of that rookie, and not all of them were ignorant. Oh Chulshin thought of the name Kim Joo-hyuk and resolved to ensure the boy would join the family no matter the cost. The stadium lights were turning on. Many fans of Choi Arenuna were there, cheering enthusiastically. The boy was quite impressed by those lunatics, who had already served in the military yet were clamoring for a 17-year-old girl, calling her Nuna. That would be the final ranked match. Kim Joo-hyuk was set to fight Choi Aren, the second daughter of the Trojan family. At the start of the match, she immediately drew her sword from its sheath, preparing to strike for the first time. Kim Joo-hyuk faced her with a calm, serene expression. The two stood still for a moment, neither moving nor speaking. He quickly assumed she was waiting for his first move, and the fact that she was at least trying to read the situation made her better than his previous opponents. He chuckled lightly, pondering what he should do at that moment. Then he started walking toward his key opponent, who was on guard. He observed her with a frightening expression, his hands in his pockets. She stared back, fearless and unafraid. She gripped her sword with great strength and determination, releasing flashes of lightning. Everyone was impressed because the girl had already mastered the Trojan family's elemental exchange ability at just 17 years old. She charged at her opponent with all her courage and determination. The boy took a slight step forward, giving her the opportunity to strike. She immediately delivered a blow with her sword, unleashing a torrent of blue lightning with immense power. But she was left baffled because her enemy had disappeared from in front of her so quickly. Suddenly, he remarked that if she revealed her attack's target with her eyes, it would be easy to dodge. He was standing calmly beside her. She was utterly confused by this, and out of nowhere, she was struck directly on her body. Her eyes widened, showing a mix of pain and agony, yet she felt relieved to have defended the blow. Kim Joo-hyuk stared at her without saying a word. Choi Erin quickly grabbed her impressive sword, flying backward with it in her hands. Kim Joo-hyuk was impressed because the girl had managed to block his blow with her sword, which was why he hadn't felt the impact on a human body, but rather on an object. She thought it was incredibly heavy. Suddenly, a fist touched her sword. Choi Erin stared at her opponent before her, who challenged her to dodge the next attack. Then he unleashed a powerful strike, sending the girl flying far away with a desperate expression. She landed on the ground, sprawled, and left there. The boy thought there was something odd about that attack. It seemed like his posture was slightly off, but in the end it didn't matter because the victory was secured regardless. The panel displayed the top 10 admissions to Valhalla, and Kim Joo-hyuk ranked first. He was walking nearby, adjusting his shoulder. Suddenly, many voices left him surprised and confused. A crowd had gathered, begging for his attention and acceptance into a group. Annoyed, he shouted at everyone to shut up, wrapping up this chapter. On the news page, the headline was that Kim Joo-hyuk was on the verge of madness, described as a crazy psychopath. 92 comments criticized him, claiming he was likely a bad person due to his reprehensible actions. For a rookie, the boy was seen as very arrogant and over the top. The comments continued discussing his potential and negative behavior. Meanwhile, in the grand, towering buildings of Valhalla, the freshmen were being warmly welcomed. Kim Joo-hyuk thought all the introductory information about Valhalla's history was boring and tedious. Then he noticed a boy behind him. The boy averted his gaze with a nervous and shy expression. Kim Joo-hyuk figured he had attracted a lot of attention the previous day, but there was still an unresolved issue. That claim about weapons and memories that the panel had ordered some time ago. On his way, Kim Joo-hyuk thought he only needed to get in and out, which seemed like an easy task. Yet he noticed something nearby. The opening ceremony had already ended by then. The virtual combat simulation room was just ahead. The former chief instructor of Valhalla from the Trojan Guild, Kim Lee-gun, wondered why the class distribution was arranged that way. Ahead was Yu So-yeon from the Yushin family, and beside her stood Urin from the Trojan clan. In the middle was Oh Si-hyuk from the Osun group. They had said the classes would be distributed randomly, but 3 of the 5 geniuses from the families were in the same room. And there was something else interesting. The guy glanced at Kim Joo-hyuk and noticed that he was also in that class, completely condemning the man's year. He tried to calm himself to assert control over the situation right away. He introduced himself, saying it was a pleasure to meet the young ones and that he was the person in charge of the class as well as their instructor. First, he pressed a button on the podium he was standing at. All the girls panicked at what happened next. Suddenly, they all appeared in a vast field. Everyone began questioning where they were, as they had been in a completely different place just seconds ago. Kim Lee-gun grasped the hilt of his sword and thought about showing a bit of bloodlust right there. Suddenly, several demonic beings, hideous and terrifying, appeared, filled with rage and wielding various weapons. Everyone began screaming and panicking at the sight of it all. Oh Si-hyuk thought those were orcs and goblins, and there were at least 100 of them. Suddenly, the ugly green monster started moving toward him. One tried to strike him with its sharp-clawed hand, and another tried to leap toward the boy, but it was stopped by the protective barrier. Kim Lee-gun thought everything was going according to plan, because the barrier was working perfectly. He then called Kim Joo-hyuk closer. The latter approached the podium, and was promptly asked by the instructor if he could handle all those monsters entirely on his own without any help. These were the monsters surrounding the barrier. The boy thought silently about his answer. Kim Lee-gun reasoned that he was now certain of the boy's diminished ego, which was natural since most had only ever seen monsters in books and comics. He told Kim Joo-hyuk to stop pretending to consider it and just say no so the lesson could proceed. The boy gave a slight smirk. This made the instructor angry because the boy was laughing, and soon he discovered that Kim Joo-hyuk could, in fact, handle the monsters alone. He thought the boy was bluffing and told him to try since he was so confident and certain about it. Kim Joo-hyuk questioned him, saying that such a thing couldn't be done on the first day without some kind of reward for the mission. After saying that, the boy was really speaking his language, and was quickly asked what he wanted to bet on at that moment. He replied that if he handled all the monsters, the instructor would fulfill all his wishes as long as they were within his power. The boy placed his hand on his chin, thinking, and said that although it wasn't a big deal, he would accept the deal. The instructor tried to intimidate the boy, who simply asked for the sword quickly, because it would be impossible to fight barehanded without any weapon to assist. He immediately placed his hand on his sword and handed it over for the boy to use. Kim Joo-hyuk observed the weapon with a delighted and excited expression. He placed it on his back, looking at the enormous challenge ahead. The instructor watched everything with a downcast expression. All the young people were also watching, thoroughly entertained. Kim Joo-hyuk firmly gripped the weapon and began to fight bravely and fiercely against the monstrous beings, concluding this chapter. He had a furious and angry expression, continuing to bravely eliminate all his opponents. One of them tried to strike him cowardly from behind, but the boy quickly gripped his weapon firmly and blocked the potential strike without a moment's hesitation. He thought he wasn't doing too badly, considering it had been 300 years since his last action with a blade. Back then, due to the monsters, humans couldn't fulfill their roles and all types of weapons were used to kill them. But even so, the sword remained a very familiar tool. He attentively observed 2 things as he had noticed something strange. There was a monster trying to attack him mercilessly and cowardly from behind. Kim Joo-hyuk quickly dodged the cowardly strike, and everything was just as he had imagined, following a very simple pattern. It was just a very well-made NPC monster simulation. Everyone inside the capsule watched him, thoroughly impressed. Kim Lee-gun thought it was impossible, as he had only lent the boy a mere, almost useless sword. It had no magical power or fast fencing capabilities, yet the boy was cutting through everything with incredible ease and mastery. It was as if the sword was absorbing all those monstrous beings. The girl was stunned, and the boy reflected on all that madness. She observed him through the protective capsule, standing completely still. She remained silent, not uttering a single word, with an expression of amazement and perplexity. Kim Joo-hyuk stated that he wanted to go to the Constellation Room, since he had defeated all those weak enemies. He left the area and headed toward the protected barrier. He then asked if the instructor would fulfill his promise, making him visibly angry and irritated. The sun was already setting amidst those towering buildings. Kim Lee-gun wrapped up his class and advised the tired students to rest in their dormitories without lingering in the area. The boy was slumped in a chair in the classroom, thinking the class was too long and wanting to grab his belongings to leave as quickly as possible. He also thought about how he never wanted to teach students and hadn't even gone to school himself before. And while the class had been boring most of the time, he had managed to gather a lot of important information, especially regarding topics related to the history of constellations. In his previous life, there was no such thing as speaking of it. Constellation was the term used to describe the transformation of those who amassed great fortunes into deities, often connected with hunters. Valhalla in Korea was the third largest academy in the world, containing various constellation relics. Kim Joo-hyuk thought that everything about slaying monsters and swordsmanship seemed useless, and that he should head to the dormitory to focus on practicing martial arts, as his body was quite weak. But suddenly, he noticed something unusual. It was the white-haired girl approaching from behind. Meanwhile, in the professor's office, a man sipping coffee commented that his friend had been through a lot. Kim Lee-gun admitted that, to be honest, it was more embarrassing than truly painful, and questioned whether that boy was really a high school student to Lee Sang-cheol, who was astonished to learn that the boy had killed 120 monsters in the simulation room without having ever seen one in real life. What Kim Lee-gun was saying was absolutely true. From what the senior instructor observed, Kim Joo-hyuk seemed ordinary, but carried something in his past. Kim Lee-gun was impressed to discover that the boy was an orphan from a small orphanage in a highly dangerous area, and by no means was he lying, as Lee Sang-cheol had conducted his own research on the matter. Furthermore, a fraud wouldn't attempt to enter Valhalla by causing a scene at the opening ceremony. Lee Sang-cheol asked if the boy had requested to enter the Constellation Room, receiving an affirmative response from Kim Lee-gun. The senior instructor said he would let the boy go to the first floor of the basement according to the director's instructions, making his friend very grateful for it. And since he had brought him there, he should take responsibility. Besides, he didn't know much about the completely restricted area on the 5th floor, but there should be no problem with a quick visit to the first. Kim Lee-gun expressed concern about what might happen in the next year, leaving his friend confused. His class had 3 students from the 5 families, and it wasn't easy to manage even one of them, which the senior instructor fully understood. He didn't try to comfort him, but mentioned there was an exchange student from the Ventric family in another class, leaving him quite surprised. Rockdale Ventric belonged to the Direct Ventric group. Kim Lee-gun had heard that the boy had been expelled from the British Academy for causing trouble. He took a deep breath, still somewhat worried, and said that after hearing that, he felt his situation was better than the neighboring class. Kim Joo-hyuk looked at the girl with a dubious expression. She also stared back at him without saying a word. He broke the silence, asking what had happened. The girl asked him to teach her all those swordsmanship techniques, concluding this chapter. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't quite understand all of it. The girl was very eager to learn the swordsmanship he had demonstrated earlier, but he responded negatively, and she questioned his decision. He replied that it was simply because he didn't want to teach, and since the girl had nothing more to say, he would leave. She looked into his eyes and asked, "Please." He answered again that he simply didn't want to teach her. Insulting her, he called her deaf and told her to stop following him immediately. Because Kim Joo-hyuk had no intention of teaching her, he walked away from the spot immediately, leaving the girl there alone looking sad and disappointed. The next day, in the grand buildings of Valhalla, Kim Joo-hyuk was sitting in his classroom chair, very quiet and deep in thought at that moment. He looks at his hands and realizes his body was better than he thought. Yet he couldn't do much since he had no magical power, and it was hard to control his mana. This problem could be resolved if he found that thing, and for that, he would prepare a little magic. Suddenly, someone approached him speaking. It was a blonde show-off bully. He was Rockdale Ventric, accompanied by his assistant, Uriah de Felix. He walked over to Kim Joo-hyuk's desk. Kim immediately asked for his identity. Rockdale Ventric thought the boy was uneducated since he didn't know his family. He quickly introduced himself and said he didn't want to waste time. He asked if Kim Joo-hyuk was interested in becoming strong. He invited him to join the main Ventric family. In most families, the affiliated lineages had more difficulty gaining power and wealth compared to the main branch. However, the Ventric family had a beak mask, a constellation guardian, making it different from others. Typically, an S-class soldier or higher would protect the organization, directly selecting a star member and granting them power and protection. But for the Ventric family, they chose to sign an agreement with a non-constellation-related individual to avoid contractual misunderstandings. Due to this unique decision, the organization held significant power in Europe, and joining it would grant immense influence. With this authority, Rockdale Ventric, supported by his family, had become excessively arrogant. Something had happened not too long ago. Due to an incident at the British Academy, he had been expelled. But he wouldn't cry over spilled milk. at the door of that place alongside his assistant. He declared he always got what he wanted, and even though he had been expelled before, being from the Ventric family meant they would always find a way to put him back on track. After all, that person would enjoy it too much. Returning to the present, he tried to talk to Kim Joo-hyuk. He thought he could have the boy who had been the center of attention at the entrance ceremony on his side, so he offered the boy a proposal to take him to the Ventric family's constellation if he accepted. But he was arrogantly declined. He stood there stunned and not knowing what to do at that moment. His assistant also made a strange face. He became furious, but Kim Joo-hyuk wasn't naive and realized he wasn't truly interested and had just wanted to show off from the start. Rockdale Ventric angrily called the boy a rude, disgusting brat. Suddenly, an authority figure arrived, ordering everyone back to their seats and calling out the show-off. This made him even angrier because the man addressed him by his full name. The man was the senior instructor, Lee Sang-cheol. He emphasized Valhalla's rules, reminding everyone that this wasn't the academy. The show-off thought about that man knowing he was a combat instructor. He gritted his teeth in rage and fury, returning to his seat quietly with his servant. He declared he would encounter Kim Joo-hyuk again someday. Kim watched everything with his red eyes without saying a single word. Later that day, as school ended, Kim Joo-hyuk thought about how he hadn't learned anything related to the Constellation Hall during the lessons and had instead gotten involved with an idiot that morning. He pondered many things about the Guild scouts, students, and instructors who wanted to recruit him despite his criticism of them. Once again, someone approached him from behind. It was the persistent girl asking him to teach her fencing again. He became annoyed, realizing it still wasn't enough for her either. Back in the Grand Valhalla dormitory, more specifically in the highest class hall, inside someone was seething with anger, smashing chandeliers with uncontrollable fury. It was the annoying and arrogant Rockdale Ventric. He was infuriated by the orphan Kim Joo-hyuk, who had humiliated him. He demanded that Yuria immediately call Dizera as he needed someone to deal with a certain person, ending the chapter. Rockdale Ventric continued to simmer with rage. He once again called his poor assistant by name. She stayed quiet and still as he spoke. He grabbed her hair forcefully and cruelly, demanding she respond immediately. He then asked if she still believed herself to be the eldest daughter of the palace family. He threatened to throw the poor girl out of the group, prompting her to beg him out too. He swiftly threw her to the ground with all his strength. Once more, he ordered her to call Dizera as there was someone for him to deal with. He also instructed her to inform a second-year member of the Rise family that he wanted to see him. The terrified, helpless blonde assistant replied affirmatively. At their Valhalla dormitory, specifically in Kim Joo-hyuk's room, he was meditating with bright blue magic radiating from his body. He was deeply focused on what he was doing. Suddenly, he coughed, releasing a lot of smoke. Realizing once again that his body was truly useless and couldn't summon any magic with it, he entered a deep silence, lost in thought. He began recalling his return to the dormitory that afternoon, when the girl had appeared behind him once again, and approached him for the second time. They had already reached the dormitory door and she kept following him. She repeated her request like a parrot, being so irritating and almost begged for action to be taken. He then proposed 10 million won per lesson. The girl looked deeply saddened and disappointed again, and since she probably couldn't afford it, he had decided to leave. Suddenly, she asked for his phone, leaving him utterly confused and unsure of what was going on. He asked why she was doing that. She was adding her number, so it would be easier to transfer the payment, leaving Kim Joo-hyuk even more astonished. Out of nowhere, he received a notification on his phone. It was a transfer of 100 million won, and now he was supposed to teach her his impressive and masterful techniques. He said he wouldn't do it and would decline the transaction. Returning to the present, he reflected on how shocked he had been earlier. How could a high school student have 100 million won? If he were to teach her, he wouldn't have to reveal all of his secrets, but the sheer amount of money was overwhelming. He figured he could use it for what he needed, so it didn't matter, even if his mana was as limited as a beggar's. He stood up, ready for his mission, taking his first steps toward victory. He was going to find the secret vault at that moment, even amidst complete darkness. He walked through dense vegetation. He thought about how he had checked beforehand, but most vaults hidden 300 years ago had been destroyed. According to his research, only 4 might remain, and it was likely that just 3 were left. One thing was certain, they would be in the Valhalla Mountains, and he would search without giving up. He began to channel all his blue magic. The vault's location could be determined by sensing the marble, which responded to his abilities and could be detected even with minimal effort. A bright circle appeared on the ground. Finally, Kim Joo-hyuk had found something. He approached the glowing neon blue circle and started digging with his iron shovel, once again realizing how weak his body was. He thought that if he had known about this hardship, he would have buried it in a shallower, more accessible place. And if it weren't for the Tower of Destruction 300 years ago, there would have been no need for any of this. The world had been on the brink of destruction, and there was no safe place for his riches, so he had built great vaults and stored everything there. With great faith, he believed the contents inside would be safe and intact. The sun was already rising over the towering buildings of Valhalla, and at last, Kim Joo-hyuk found what he was searching for, the long-sought vaults of treasure. The location of the lock was a mystery, but he quickly found it. A regular key wouldn't fit in that lock, so he crafted a line of magic, shaping it into a special key. It fit perfectly into the keyhole, and he celebrated his achievement. The door began to open slowly, using all the strength he had in his frail body. At last, he managed to enter the vault, landing on his feet in front of countless golden treasures. With a wide smile of joy and excitement, he even asked how his riches were doing. Concluding this chapter, he stared silently at all that money with a thoughtful expression. Now that he didn't have to worry about money, he could search for what he needed in peace. Suddenly, he was startled by something he saw. The storage stones were right before him. To maintain the vaults, he had imbued them with a bit of magic, and the day to use them had finally arrived. He picked up a magic stone in his hand. It began to emit a bright blue light. This was expected of a storage stone, as its magical power should overflow in exactly that way. He stopped extracting the magic and said he would first take care of the remaining storage stones, deciding to transport the lighter jewels before the heavy gold bars. The day was beautiful in Valhalla. Kim Joo-hyuk was once again sleeping in his chair like a zombie. He thought he must be a cursed lunatic for planning to build a vault in the future, as his muscles were already aching just from digging a little. Suddenly, the girl appeared in front of him again, asking him to teach her swordsmanship techniques. It really seemed like she wasn't going to let it go. He reasoned based on his information why she had chosen him to teach her swordsmanship, and soon asked Arin Choi about her persistence, since she could learn everything from her family. She replied that she had never seen anyone handle a sword better than Kim Joo-hyuk. He then questioned her about her father, as he was the head of the Trojan family, and probably better with a sword than him. Just as she was about to talk about her father, the instructor called Kim Joo-hyuk to the teacher's lounge, leaving him very confused about it. But it was all related to the things he had asked about last time. And since he really wanted to know, he quickly got up without hesitation. He rose from his chair and left, leaving the girl standing right there. She asked for permission to speak. She remained silent for a moment with a slightly sad expression. Kim Joo-hyuk told her that the next day at 6 in the morning, she should meet him at the local training field. She was stunned by the information she had just received. The boy asked if she didn't want that opportunity. She had a moment of realization and replied that she would definitely be there. Meanwhile, in the nearby teacher's lounge, the instructor sat in front of the boy, and since he had a class in a few minutes, he spoke quickly and without delay. First, Kim Joo-hyuk's access to the Constellation building had been approved, and he only needed to go to the building's basement. However, he was not authorized to enter any floor below the basement. He replied affirmatively and promptly asked when he could do it. He found out he could go that same night and confirmed he would do so. Kim Ling-gun was very surprised, as he thought the boy would make a scene about not being authorized to go below the first basement floor. Finally, the two parted ways to attend to their respective duties. The boy left the room immediately after that. Meg had already fallen in Valhalla. This was the place they sought. It was the treasure of Valhalla Academy in the Constellation Hall. The boy observed everything around him. There were two guards dressed in black standing and keeping watch. As he carefully observed everything, one of them was speaking into a radio with someone. Kim Joo-hyuk remarked that the security was stronger compared to the main gate and was told that this demonstrated the importance of the Constellation building. He thought not only about the guards but also about the exterior walls. They were covered with all kinds of magic, completely surrounded except for the entrance. Kim Joo-hyuk wanted to ask his professor for clarification. He then questioned how someone could descend to the second basement floor and whether it would be illegal. Kim Ling-gun quickly replied that it wouldn't make someone a criminal but would get them expelled from there. Moreover, they'd go insane before leaving the school, leaving the boy slightly confused about it. Kim Ling-gun then explained that on the second floor, the magical power of the constellations flowed without restriction, and anyone who touched the magic would have their mind shattered. The boy quickly grasped the situation. Meanwhile, the instructor wondered why the boy had asked about this before entering the building, as it seemed like he truly wanted to go down there. But he soon dismissed the thought, reasoning that the top entry candidate wouldn't do such a thing since staying at the academy was much better. Kim Ling-gun informed him that he had only 30 minutes. The boy replied affirmatively, saying he'd be back soon. Suddenly, the panel appeared, displaying and ordering the same things as before. He observed it carefully right there. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't care about being expelled since he had come to Valhalla solely because of that place, and he had to go to the third basement first. He wondered why there were so many endless stairs in that building. As he descended them quickly, suddenly he saw something ahead of him. That place looked like a massive prison. He was sure the Constellation Hall was on the first basement floor. All of it didn't seem that important, leaving him uncertain about going deeper. Suddenly, the panel appeared again, informing him that the requirements were met and that he was being transported to the hall, leaving him uncertain about what was happening and where this place might be. Suddenly, he began disappearing from there along with the panel. Someone possibly familiar greeted him in the new location. It was the infamous enemy, Brace. He looked at Brace, utterly surprised and wearing a terrified expression. Brace remarked that after 300 years, this was their reunion. Suddenly, in the middle of his speech, he received a strong punch to the face. Kim Joo-hyuk had delivered a direct blow to his enemy, and he was quite pleased to see that cursed figure. Brace asked his enemy to calm down, but he received another punch to the face. He tried to pacify the situation for a proper conversation, but yet again he was struck because Kim Joo-hyuk only wanted his death. All of his attempts to stop the fight were useless. He was already on the ground, weakened and defenseless. and Kim Joo-hyuk was growing tired of fighting. He then remarked that he wasn't the kind of person who used fists, but this case was different because Brace had destroyed his future. On top of that, Brace had ruined his wealth, honor, and all the time he had invested in his disciples. Brace then asked if Kim Joo-hyuk wasn't curious to know what kind of place this was. Kim Joo-hyuk admitted he was curious because there didn't seem to be anything peculiar about it. Brace explained that this was an imaginary world, a space within a relic, leaving Kim Joo-hyuk confused. What Kim Joo-hyuk was seeing, according to Brace, was purely imagination because his body had ceased to exist 300 years ago. He wanted to say that he had always been within that relic. The boy was deeply shocked as this revealed something significant. Brace gave a slight smirk at that moment and declared that he had become a constellation, leaving Kim Joo-hyuk speechless for a moment. Then, in anger, he delivered another strong punch to Brace's face. Meanwhile, outside the building, Kim Lim-doon had been waiting for the boy for quite some time. Suddenly, something appeared before him. It was Kim Joo-hyuk, being searched by the local guards. Lim-doon questioned if the boy had done anything strange, but Kim Joo-hyuk said he had only looked around. He added that he hadn't gone any deeper because he didn't want to lose his head. The instructor then ordered him to go home and Kim Joo-hyuk agreed. He soon left the place. On his way back to the dormitory, he recalled the reunion with his terrible enemy from the past. He didn't care that Brace had become a constellation, he only wanted an answer about what that transparent notification panel was. Brace claimed to know nothing about it, and immediately received another punch to the face because Kim Joo-hyuk wasn't joking around. Brace explained that after being killed, he had been trapped in that thing for 300 years without any power. Kim Joo-hyuk calmed down after hearing this, opening his hand, discovering that Brace had also received that same notification. The information stated that Brace was to contact the reincarnated Kim Joo-hyuk to retrieve his memories. And because of that, a suspicious figure had emerged, making him question the reason for becoming the owner of the Tower of Destruction. Kim Joo-hyuk was shocked and uncertain about who this man was and what he was doing. Brace then admitted he didn't know, as part of his memory was missing and wouldn't return all at once. He then asked what Kim Joo-hyuk's notifications said. Kim Joo-hyuk explained that the notifications instructed him to find a weapon and memories, but he couldn't read the lower part as it was censored by some symbols. He also didn't recall losing memories because he still remembered the tower. Brace suggested that perhaps not everything had come to his mind yet since he had already found the weapon, and the rest would come naturally. Kim Joo-hyuk was puzzled about the weapon. Brace explained that this space was the realm of the 4 village swords, which had become sacred relics, and that he had become a constellation because he had used one of them. Kim Joo-hyuk called him a cursed being, once again filled with rage. Back in the present moment, Kim Joo-hyuk reflected on how his village sword had become a relic and housed a constellation, leaving him deeply confused. He wanted to destroy everything and leave it behind, but there was one issue. Kim Joo-hyuk grasped a blue magical sword with his hand. He began thinking about Brace, who had once been called the King of Destruction, and how the new mission on the panel was only achievable with the village weapon. Suddenly, someone arrived, asking for his identification. They were a group of bullies and show-offs. The leader of the group was the eldest son of the Sunrise family, Lyric Sunrise, who said the seniors were away on a trip and demanded the boy introduce himself. Kim Joo-hyuk wondered what kind of senior and bully accepts freshmen. The show-offs commented on the boy's behavior and his lack of manners for not saying hello. One of them said he wanted to beat the boy up and receive the leader's approval. He approached Kim Joo-hyuk holding something in his hand. But as he started talking about the differences between first and second years, he took a massive kick straight to the chest. Kim Joo-hyuk told the thugs to come at him and stop talking so much, ending the chapter. The short-haired show-off groaned in pain and agony from the kick he had taken. Kim Joo-hyuk leaped, preparing another precise strike, and delivered another blow, this time to his talkative enemy's face. The boy flew far, utterly destroyed and severely battered. He landed on his backside, causing a loud thud in the area. Finally, he hit a wall, stopping abruptly. The blonde boy thought Kim Joo-hyuk was insane and reckless. His eyes widened as he stared at him in fear. He noticed that the boy, who moments ago had no weapon, now wielded a sword. Kim Joo-hyuk commented that the perfect grip felt incredible, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. He quickly ordered the thugs to attack because if they delayed, they'd be crushed. 3 hours earlier, Rockdale Ventrick told the blonde boy he only needed to do something very simple. It was just to deal with one weak, useless student. And in return, a reward benefiting the Sunrise family would be given immediately. He provided the identification of the first-year student he wanted targeted. It didn't matter if the boy used weapons, as the mess would be easily cleaned up regardless. Finally, he asked if the boy would accept the proposal. The blonde boy said he understood everything and accepted it. He left, slamming the door hard and quickly without hesitation, thinking that the boy's first-place rank didn't matter because he was a first-year novice and couldn't compete with someone from the second year. The difference in rank between people was inevitable due to the first year's contracts with the constellations. Valhalla students had to visit the constellation room in the second semester of their first year to form a contract and become second years. Once they became contractors, they could invoke and use the power of the constellation, and in the blonde boy's mind, Kim Joo-hyuk didn't have an active guardian. He thought it would be easy to crush the boy. That's what he believed, but there was a problem with all of this. At that moment, the boy was already moving his sword, striking down yet another show-off. One of them cursed him, holding a sharp, blood-red knife, but suddenly he heard something approaching him. It was the rookie's sword mercilessly annihilating him without hesitation. Out of nowhere, Kim Joo-hyuk heard something heading in his direction. There was another thug trying to attack him cowardly, the boy swung his sharp, pointed sword, but it struck only the dirt floor. The attacker stood there, confused as he had missed his powerful, strong strike, and Kim Joo-hyuk was already beside him, mocking him relentlessly. He promptly landed a precise sword strike to the thug's filthy, ugly face. The attacker flew far from the spot, leaving his friends stunned at what they were witnessing. And finally, after flying through the air, he landed headfirst on the ground brutally and harshly. The blonde boy was shocked as the rookie was taking down the second years one by one without even breaking a sweat. Before becoming contractors, second years should have better skills than first years, but these had proven to be useless and weak. The blonde boy wondered about the strange, unprecedented swordsmanship technique. It seemed like the boy was just moving around with moderate strength, but those hit could barely stand. Kim Joo-hyuk then faced the remaining opponents and said he would crush anyone wasting time during the fight. The blonde boy thought everyone there was deciding whether to attack or run away immediately. He told his team not to be afraid because the boy was just a weak, useless rookie. Kim Joo-hyuk remarked that the bully leader had a lot of nerve. This comment made the blonde boy furious and enraged, and he charged at him without hesitation. But suddenly, halfway there, he felt something touch him. It was Kim Joo-hyuk's sharp sword striking his body. He mocked him for standing still, even knowing he would be hit, and finally delivered a strong and precise blow to his opponent. Using all the strength he had in his body, the blonde boy wondered when the rookie had managed to get so close, and then collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately opened his palm and slapped the boy's face several times to wake him up. He also asked who they were and why they wanted to fight him without any apparent reason. The blonde boy explained that they were all senior veterans. Kim Joo-hyuk thought this wasn't normal and suspected there must be someone behind this pointless fight. The pale boy with earrings admitted it was just to break the nose of the rookie ranked first and nothing more. Kim Joo-hyuk mocked them, speaking about their supposed loyalty as bullies. And as he was leaving, he was called back by the arrogant little boy. The boy warned him that if people found out about the incident, the rookie would be expelled immediately. But Kim Joo-hyuk didn't care, saying everyone would know about this embarrassing and shameful defeat for the losers. Several second-year students had attempted to beat up a freshman but ended up losing miserably, which would be humiliating if it got out. So the blonde boy should think carefully if he wanted any chance of joining a guild. Kim Joo-hyuk left after saying that, leaving everyone on the ground, beaten and humiliated. The clock struck 8:28. Rockdale Ventric anxiously waited for a call with great anticipation. Suddenly, Varric Sunrise called him, leaving him excited. He immediately asked the boy if the beating had been delivered as promised, but the boy simply revealed the contractor's name at that moment and informed him that he was withdrawing from the job and relinquishing the responsibility, ending this chapter. The chapter begins with Rockdale Ventric being stunned by the boy's words. The blonde boy advised him to stay away from anything related to Kim Joo-hyuk from now on. He reflected on what had gone wrong with that cursed boy because just hours ago he had been confident. He suggested filing a report with the administration, because if there were any visible bruises left, there would likely be enough evidence to proceed. If the blonde boy did what Rockdale Ventric requested, he would be rewarded and sponsored by the family. But the boy thought that even with sponsorship from such a powerful group, they wouldn't be able to recover their lost honor. He then hung up on Rockdale Ventric, leaving him furious and enraged. He cursed the boy and smashed his phone to the ground. His assistant simply watched the scene, standing still and silent. He then called for Yuria, who responded affirmatively. She had already carried out Rockdale Ventric's orders, but since Desera was far away, it would take a long time for him to arrive. This made him even angrier because the boy was so distant. Meanwhile, in the beautiful country of Mexico, more specifically at the Aripia Academy, several boys lay sprawled on the ground. A brute was looking at his high-tech phone amidst all the chaos. He was the fearsome Desera Ventric and noticed that his brother wanted him to go to Korea because he would have to deal with someone named Kim Joo-hyuk, and the reward was already prepared, leaving him excited to hear this. He thought there was no one he could turn to for money after being kicked out, and now a great turnaround had happened in his life. The next day, at 6 p.m. in Valhalla's Grand Training Hall, Kim Joo-hyuk was impressed by the size of the enormous space and was already excited, ready to run tirelessly with great determination. Suddenly, someone arrived and questioned his presence there. He discovered it was Barch in the sealed sword, leaving him surprised. Kim Joo-hyuk was only impressed because he thought the boy had escaped somehow and would need to beat him up and put him back. But since that wasn't the case, everything was fine between them. Kim Joo-hyuk planted his feet firmly on the ground and began stretching while asking questions to his fearsome enemy. He talked about the sword that had become an artifact and was currently being kept at Valhalla, as well as how they had left the Constellation Room with it. Kim Joo-hyuk was concerned because Brace had swapped the weapon for a slightly identical replica. He was questioned about how he had learned to do that and replied that even after losing all his power, you could still create such forgeries. Kim Joo-hyuk discovered that Brace didn't know why he had such strange abilities. Suddenly, the gray-haired girl arrived at the scene. While Kim Joo-hyuk was still stretching his body, he was surprised by the girl's presence. She then asked about the swordsmanship lessons, but the boy wasn't going to teach her at that moment. Instead, they would start by improving her stamina. The cute girl looked very confused upon hearing this. Still, she was determined to learn, willing to do whatever was necessary. Kim Joo-hyuk told her to start stretching immediately, and she responded affirmatively. Although it was basic, the girl needed to improve her stamina to better absorb mana and control it more easily. The current training method was quite strange since it prioritized one thing over another equally important aspect. Koyerin, despite possessing a lot of mana, only had the stamina of a student wielding a simple sword. She informed him that she had finished stretching. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately said they would begin real training at that very moment. The two then started doing a lot of push-ups, and they also did squats with great determination. Additionally, they performed upper body exercises. Choi Erin ended up utterly exhausted, collapsed on the ground, physically destroyed and gasping for air. But she was astonished to learn that this was just the beginning of the crazy and intense preparation. Kim Joo-hyuk told her to stop being lazy and get up immediately without hesitation, because they still had to run 20 long kilometers around the area. Meanwhile, in Valhalla's first-year Class A, Kim Joo-hyuk wondered about the girl's physical condition and commented that she had a body with great development potential. She was next to him, apparently tired, with dark circles under her eyes and a physically worn-out expression. The class teacher then called for silence from everyone present. The superior class instructor and supervisor of dimensional monsters, Lilia, informed them that they would have a simple written exam that day. Even though she had briefly explained it on the first day, she had asked all students to study. So that day, she would test their knowledge of how to deal with each individual monster. The exam began shortly after. Everyone seemed deep in thought as they worked on it. Even Choi Erin appeared to be struggling with the test. Kim Joo-hyuk stared at her as if she were his most feared enemy. Suddenly, the teacher checked the time on her very advanced and stylish watch. She then announced the end of the time limit, instructing everyone on how to return the test papers. That test wouldn't count toward the general individual ranking, but would measure their skills for the next class. Once all the tests were submitted, she informed the class that next week they would begin the first official lesson in the virtual combat communication room. She then bid farewell to everyone as she quickly left the room. Kim Joo-hyuk remained silent after hearing all this with a thoughtful expression. Brace began questioning him about the method he used for the tests, leaving him astonished to learn that Brace had been watching everything. The enemy said he had nothing to do in there and was asked about his thoughts on the protagonist. He explained that, to be exact, you could only hear the boy's imaginations related to him. Kim Joo-hyuk said he had simply written the answers as he knew them, and his enemy replied that he understood. Meanwhile, in Valhalla's first-year teacher's lounge, the teacher was quite annoyed with Kim Joo-hyuk because he dared to call those useless phrases answers. Kim Ling-gun was walking nearby with a cup in his hand. Suddenly, he heard some strange noises around him. There was the teacher, extremely upset and furious at the moment. He approached and asked if those were the tests from his class, receiving an affirmative response. She explained her method for preparing the next lesson and highlighted that there was valuable information within the seemingly simple test. She noted that, as expected from Class A, which consisted of prodigious children from the best families, everyone had done very well, leaving Kim Ling-gun surprised. He then said he would be on his way, and the teacher responded affirmatively. He continued sipping his mysterious drink from the white cup. Suddenly, he was startled by a loud scream, causing him to spill the entire contents of the cup. That was the moment the teacher became furious upon looking at Kim Joo-hyuk's test. He approached her and asked if the prodigious boy hadn't tried hard enough. He discovered that the boy had been mocking the class in such a way, leaving him astonished and shocked. Lilia stated that this couldn't be ignored and that she would show all the answers in the next class, because it wasn't that easy to deal with monsters in such a manner. A week later, during a virtual combat simulation at Valhalla, Lilia announced that she had graded the tests from the previous class, and although most students did very well, there was a caveat. She ordered Kim Joo-hyuk to step forward. Without hesitation, he did as instructed. The two stood facing each other. Lilia handed the boy his test sheet. It was marked with numerous red corrections. The teacher then revealed that Kim Joo-hyuk had received a 0, and it seemed he hadn't taken the tests seriously. He disagreed, insisting he had put effort into it. She had a few questions for him. The first was his answer to the question about the most effective method to handle a stone goblin. Kim Joo-hyuk replied that the solution was to strike it in the stomach. The second question asked what to do if 8 wild goblins were charging at someone. Kim Joo-hyuk answered that the solution was to send each one to hell, starting with the closest. The The teacher couldn't believe he was serious with those answers, and he hadn't even tried to disguise his lack of effort. The best way to kill a stone goblin wasn't with a sword, as it wouldn't be powerful enough. Lilia doubted Kim Joo-hyuk could even manage it. He contradicted his teacher, saying he would finish the fight with a single strike. This left her irritated with his nonsense and boundless ego, but she understood his confidence. And since Kim Joo-hyuk was so sure of his answer, she decided to give him a unique opportunity. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the area. A monster roared, trying to intimidate everyone. It stood in front of the prodigy boy and the protagonist. The teacher then informed him that if he could kill the stone goblin exactly as he had explained, she would immediately change his test grade. Kim Joo-hyuk said he understood. He placed his test on the control table for the time being. He then selected a single sword from among all the weapons and charged toward the stone goblin without hesitation. The goblin stared at him with a horrifying, grotesque expression. The teacher already knew he had killed 120 goblins before, so she was confident in his talent. But there was a catch. Against this stone goblin, a random sword alone wouldn't suffice. Suddenly, the goblin began to scream in pain and agony. The boy had already started landing precise blows. The teacher was astonished at what she was witnessing. The goblin groaned desperately, with a gaping wound in its body and a deep crack in its head. Kim Joo-hyuk then began channeling mana into the fight. He discarded the simple sword, throwing it far away. He finished the battle easily, without any real excitement. With a single strike to the goblin's stomach, the fight was over. A little girl was impressed because, without any magic, he had killed a stone goblin with just one sword. The burly blonde boy watched in complete silence, utterly shocked. Even Choi Arin was visibly amazed. Lilia let out a deep sigh and asked how the boy had managed to do that. He explained that he had simply struck the goblin in the stomach, leaving the teacher puzzled. She thought that to kill a stone goblin with just a sword, one would need to be at least an A-class contractor, which made logical sense under these circumstances. Yet the boy had done it with just a weapon. He then asked if his answer had been correct. But Lilia replied in the negative, saying it had just been one question, and there were more to come. The boy was perplexed because it seemed like everything would happen again. Suddenly, the ground began to open. He was amazed at what he saw. It was a vast, dark tunnel stretching endlessly. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately asked his teacher what it was about. She told him to focus and look ahead. A faint step was heard. A few monsters appeared from the darkness of the tunnel. She thought it was challenging to control goblins with rage issues, because using the wrong technique could trigger their scream ability, attracting more goblins from the area. Typically, one would fight them with magic and kill them all at once or simply flee. And although the boy could only see 3 goblins in front of him, 5 more would appear with every mistake he made. Even if he could use his sword, it would be difficult, and Lilia had heard that his speed with it was quite slow. He then began his series of strikes, hitting the enemy squarely in the forehead, making the others furious and enraged. The green goblin remained alert during the battle, but was soon struck in its cursed mouth and fell brutally to its knees. The teacher was impressed by all of it while the boy boasted, because he had also answered the second question correctly. On another day at the training center in Valhalla, Kim Joo-hyuk and Choi Arin were training on the treadmill, running at an incredibly fast pace. The running numbers were off the charts. Soon the gray-haired girl collapsed to the ground, utterly exhausted. Once again, she was gasping for air. Kim Joo-hyuk looked at her without saying a single word with an almost amused expression. He then asked if she didn't train in her clan as she was struggling with such a simple exercise. She replied that she didn't push herself in that way. He retorted by asking how Choi Arin would fight against those strong and horrifying monsters. She responded once again, saying she could use her magical power by borrowing strength from the constellations. Kim Joo-hyuk thought everything was as expected, since instead of training their own stamina, they focused on magical power because they relied on the constellations. By not improving their physical abilities, it was fine as long as they trained enough to borrow power from a constellation, but the risks were immense. There was a chance of being caught in the middle of a labyrinth or dungeon with a magic-restricting spell. Additionally, their mana could be completely depleted after prolonged battles. Not to mention that constellation members might refuse to lend their power. After thinking about all this, Kim Joo-hyuk called the cute girl. He asked if she thought those stamina exercises were worth anything to her. Choi Arin immediately answered affirmatively, because he had told her he would teach her swordsmanship if she did them. He was stunned by that kind of response because it was basically the reason he had her do it. She was quite confused upon hearing all of this, but they brushed it off and wrapped up the day's training as they needed to head to the academy soon. She didn't understand why he wasn't going. Kim Joo-hyuk explained that he was going to do one more set of physical exercises. He asked if she wanted to join in too, but he reconsidered and dropped the question. Choi Arin quickly bid farewell and left the place, leaving Kim Joo-hyuk alone, holding a giant weight. Brace immediately asked if Choi Arin was the girl's real name, to which his enemy replied affirmatively. The villain was astonished that she had endured the training without even complaining. Kim Joo-hyuk explained that he had only decided to train her in swordsmanship because she had pestered him so much. He also responded to another of Brace's questions, saying he had never revealed the truth to her, but he suspected she already knew. Both of them found it interesting that the girl had grasped his strength just by observing, which was why Kim Joo-hyuk would teach her some skills. Suddenly, the boy heard something around him. It was a muscular man bench pressing right there, with enormous heavy weights. The guy was drenched in sweat and groaning from the effort. Out of nowhere, he also noticed Kim Joo-hyuk's presence. The two stared at each other briefly, without saying a word. Kim Joo-hyuk then asked how long the man had been there. The man explained that he had been around since the beginning, as it was customary for him to train after class. He quickly excused himself and left the area. Kim Joo-hyuk began contemplating the martial skeletal structure and skills of Si-hyuk. Brace immediately questioned why the boy was interested in that muscular man. He explained that Si-hyuk was destined to be smarter than those who only train in magical power. Kim Joo-hyuk asked Brace what those cursed constellations did, to which Brace replied that he wasn't entirely sure. The boy mocked his enemy for only being able to say that. Brace explained that even as a constellation himself, he had been isolated there for 300 years, knowing nothing about the others. He also mentioned that Kim Joo-hyuk could probably learn more about them if he completed the new mission in the Systems tab. This left Kim Joo-hyuk deep in thought about the subject. The panel suddenly appeared with some information and precautions to be taken. It mentioned the center of the Great Valhalla Forest, home to Madagaga Rona, leaving the boy pensive. It was a place he had heard about in class and was the final survival location they had visited during the first semester. He thought that if it weren't for that cursed mission, he would just leave after recovering his belongings, but it seemed like he needed to be stealthy for now. Brace immediately questioned the boy's thoughts, which he quickly justified by recalling the fight that had happened, and said that if he hadn't done what he did, his head would have been crushed, just like Brace's had been. Kim Joo-hyuk also thought that, in any case, until he completed the mission, he couldn't leave, so the secrets of reincarnation would reveal themselves automatically. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom and London, more specifically at the Bentrick Mansion, the place had many old-fashioned details, with eerie paintings covering all the walls. An enormous table with a man and a woman seated at it came into view. The woman immediately began her inquiries. She was Adelia Ventrick, the vice head of the household, demanding to know what had happened. The man reported that the labyrinth near Reading had been solved. Adelia congratulated him on this and asked if there was anything else to report at the moment. He mentioned that he was considering recruiting a few competent men he had encountered along the way, particularly a survivor from the robber clan. The leader questioned him further, to which he replied that the man was very strong and the others were A-class contractors. Adelia agreed to grant them the Bentrick's blessing, instructing him to conduct capability tests for them, to which the man affirmed. She then asked again if that was all for the day. Suddenly, she learned that the man had a report regarding Rockdale Ventrick. He mentioned hearing about a recent incident. He informed her that Desira had been summoned to South Korea. This left Adelia furious, her expression filled with rage. Desira Ventrick was the black sheep of his family, the worst delinquent to exist. He had committed numerous heinous acts using the family's name, including killing 5 people at the British Academy at the age of 19, simply because of an argument. At 20, he was completely disowned by the Ventrick family. Adelia reflected on how he had been hiding for many years and was now going to meet Rockdale. She then ordered surveillance to be placed under Rockdale's name, to which she received a firm affirmation. The man was also instructed to inform the arrogant young boy, because if he was caught doing anything suspicious, he would be removed from the family immediately. The man affirmed this once again, saying the report was complete, and excused himself promptly, leaving Adelia alone in the enormous room. She remained silent, her expression contemplative, thinking about all those cursed fools using powers they didn't earn through merit. That ability was something beyond normal. On her chair, the words "all for one" and "everything is only for one person" were inscribed. In the end, all abilities were meant for her. Lost in thought, she sought confirmation from something. It was the eerie painting of the Guardian constellation on the wall. Back in the classroom at Valhalla, the professor was discussing the formation of the word malefactor. In modern society, this noun was primarily used to describe someone who used the powers of constellations for evil. Malefactors operated both alone and in groups. Among these organizations, the most notorious was the group Onagad. Kim Joo-hyuk thought that while exercising made him feel stronger, he also had a knack for using mana. Though not at genius level, he was much better than before reincarnation, yet something still felt off. This made him question the reason for the poor condition of his body earlier. When he tried circulation on the first day, he could barely finish, as his mana was below that of an average person, and his physical state was so poor that just digging a little left him feeling faint. Yet even with a body like that, it shouldn't have deteriorated to such a degree. Something must have happened in the past, but there was no reason to stress about it now. Suddenly, a finger tapped on his desk. He looked at it, calm and composed. It was the beautiful Yu Soyeon. She left a crumpled piece of paper on his desk. The boy was surprised by the note. On the paper, a large "Hey" was written. Kim Joo-hyuk wondered what was going on now. A little while later, Kim Leen-gun announced that the students would be allowed to leave campus over the weekend, but they needed to submit separate requests. He concluded his lesson with that simple announcement. Kim Joo-hyuk reflected on the idea of leaving the campus. He quickly filled out his request for a Saturday outing with a rather trivial reason. Brace was surprised by the boy's decision, which he confirmed was genuine, and asked where he planned to go. Before he could answer it, he heard a voice calling him. It was a cute girl wearing a tiara. The two had a brief conversation about what had happened hours earlier. Kim Joo-hyuk even responded politely to her note, but she hadn't replied. He then urged her to speak quickly, as he needed to submit something and was quite busy. The little girl stumbles over her shy words. She can't form a single sentence without interrupting herself. Kim Joo-hyuk grows frustrated, calling her crazy and telling her to just nod. She becomes very angry at being insulted like that. She questions his comment but is quickly retorted, being told that making someone angry for no reason was normal for her. He then asks again what she really wanted. She recalls a moment in time when she had been observing something. It was Kim Joo-hyuk's fight with that horrifying and ugly stone goblin. She had been impressed by that battle, especially because the boy had used only a sword without any magic. It was entirely different from what the books described. She only wanted to ask him how he had killed that ugly stone monster, but her pride hurt too much to allow it. Finally, she sighs and musters the courage to ask him. Just as she is about to speak, the teacher arrives and asks the very same question she had been about to ask. The gray-haired, bespectacled woman seemed very excited to learn the boy's tricks. Kim Joo-hyuk simply wondered where that crazy woman had suddenly appeared from. He quickly asked why she was intruding out of nowhere, as he thought she disliked him, leaving her confused. He then rephrased his words, asking if she didn't like him because he had embarrassed her. The teacher promptly replied that she didn't care about that and had believed there was only one way to kill monsters, but the boy had shown her otherwise. She wanted to know everything immediately. She asked him if he wanted to be her assistant, to which he replied negatively, explaining that he needed to submit his departure form right away. That crazy woman tried to convince him in every possible way, with little success, and the two ended up leaving the cute little girl alone there. She then reflected on all the teacher's comments, feeling very confused. Taking a deep breath, she calmed herself and decided to let it all go, thinking she didn't need that humiliation. The next day, Kim Joo-hyuk was amazed by something in front of him. The enormous market was revealed, ending the chapter. Already in the immense dormitory of Valhalla, Kim Joo-hyuk sits in front of his gaming computer. Grace asks his host what he was searching for on his phone, receiving the reply that it was just information about the next day's location. The protagonist wanted to find a place where he could sell the treasure found in the vault, and that seemed like a decent spot. If the enemy had understood everything, then he had indeed found it. There was a virtual marketplace that existed on his phone. Based on some information, only an entry fee was charged to exchange practically anything in that supposedly dangerous dark web shopping environment. The reason for such an unusual marketplace's existence was explained by the fact that its creator was a guardian constellation called the Secret Ruler, according to the protagonist of the story. Thus, high-class individuals openly used the tool, and despite being completely illegal, governments dared not interfere in it. That was also the reason he managed to figure out how to enter so easily, deciding to use it for a while. Kim Joo-hyuk reads some simple tutorials on the internet. He soon notices that there was a link in the comments section of the post he was reading. Suddenly, some messages arrive from the little girl Choi Arin. They were several bunny emojis crying a lot. She informs her trainer of her absence from the next day's training, to which he replies that he also had a commitment. Kim Joo-hyuk sends a few laughs in between the messages. This leaves Choi Arin quite confused about their meaning. He quickly explains that he was just wishing her a good trip. He also asks her to stop sending so many emojis. Kim Joo-hyuk wonders about those virtual bunnies, but quickly shifts his focus to his real goal of securing a reservation and location. He quickly clicks on something dubious on his phone screen. Soon he leaves his house dressed darkly, wearing a long hoodie and a hood over his head. The location was somewhere nearby. It was probably an old cafe in the region. The entrance was right in front of him at that moment. The wooden door of the place was old, and inside there was a huge mess. Kim Joo-hyuk opens the gates of the place to enter cautiously. He just needed to go inside and head to the right corner. The likely spot was right there, close by. He opens that gray door with his hand and slowly enters another room in the place. Soon he sees something impressive in front of him. All of that was the grandiose black market. Night was already falling in the area, and the moon shone brightly in the darkness of the sky. All of it seemed very strange to Kim Joo-hyuk. It was his first time there, but the place was coincidentally very familiar. The purple sky, along with the clouds and moon, resembled the night he had seen 300 years ago. Suddenly, a man arrives, asking if it was the boy's first time there. The man had a cheerful expression, wearing black clothes and bangs in his hair. Kim Joo-hyuk wonders if that guy was the employee from the posts, as his leather jacket seemed very familiar. The man confirms that information and comments on the marketplace's usage, but the protagonist only knew the rules to a certain level. He quickly hands the man a thick bundle of cash, which the guy thanks him. Kim Joo-hyuk, after doing that, reflects on the money he spent and was about to earn there. There was something he wanted to ask the man in black. The question was where to find the right place to sell all the jewels he had. But he didn't want to auction them, as the man in black assumed. Instead, he just wanted to get rid of them quickly. The man responds that he should go to the market in the 3rd district, as many merchants there would buy anything. Kim Joo-hyuk hesitates, wondering who the most trustworthy guy in the area might be, and the man replies that it's a certain Morris known for offering the best prices. The man in black provides directions to the 3rd district, leaving the little visitor very grateful. But he had one more small piece of advice. He recommended that Kim Joo-hyuk wear a mask in that area. He explains that due to the nature of the goods traded there, everyone wore something to cover their faces most of the time. And that mask was a complimentary gift given to Kim Joo-hyuk, who thanks him from the bottom of his heart. The man in black asks him to enjoy his time in the area. Now in the 3rd district of the Grand Black Market, a man in a white mask is seen observing a beautiful, shiny diamond stone. Soon, Kim Joo-hyuk approaches, asking for his identity. It's confirmed that the guy is indeed the real Morris of the good prices. The protagonist informs him that he has some valuable goods to sell. Morris said it all depended on the items, but if it was just gold or jewelry, the evaluation would be quick and practical. Kim Joo-hyuk promptly started taking things out of his large backpack. Quickly, a black bag, seemingly heavy, appeared from within. He stated that he wanted to sell the contents of that bag. Morris wondered about the objects inside it. He immediately began evaluating the ring that was there. Suddenly, he was quite surprised by what he was observing so meticulously in front of him. That ring was a rare artifact from the era of destruction. It was definitely an ancient and very precious item regardless of the angle it was viewed from. Morris wondered if the other items were the same. Inside the bag, there were many of them shining brightly. The man with the white mask determined that they were all undoubtedly from the same era. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him, making him very alert. It was Kim Joo-hyuk, asking how much he would offer for all of it. This left him quite unsure about what to do. He wondered how such a young boy had managed to acquire so many precious, rare, and ancient artifacts. He then asked Kim Joo-hyuk where he had gotten all those items. The latter replied that such questions probably shouldn't be asked in that place. Morris, known for his fair prices, quickly apologized for it. He regretted the mistake he had made, which put his good reputation as a negotiator at risk. He then said he didn't know how much to offer for everything. He couldn't process those items as they were artifacts from the era of destruction, and he lacked the capital to buy them all. Kim Joo-hyuk then considered the rarity of the pieces and asked where he should go to get a fair price. Morris explained about the tall auction building on the way. Another question was directed to him regarding how long the auction would take. He replied it would take 2 to 3 weeks because many people book sluts, making the process slower. After another question, Kim Joo-hyuk found out he would need to return to the market personally afterward. He lamented learning about all these frustrating procedures. He quickly asked the approximate value his goods would reach at the auction. This made Mr. Morris very thoughtful. He soon picked up his cell phone. He showed the approximate value, leaving the young man very surprised. The boy thought about how many zeros were on that screen and how expensive the goods were in the past, which is why he had kept them. He then asked how much of that value Morris would not have. Based on the estimated value, the man replied that he had only 3/4 of the total amount if he sold everything he owned. Kim Joo-hyuk, slightly confused, asked if that was truly the case. He then decided to accept the offered amount immediately. This left the man with the white mask very surprised, astonished, and perplexed. The artifacts from the era of destruction had a high value for another reason beyond their age. The other major reason was the constellations. These began to appear after that era and strangely reacted well to artifacts originating from that time. Morris thought that a powerless person could form a contract with a powerful constellation thanks to those objects, and the alchemist's zone remained active. Holding a shiny and very magical ring between his fingers, he was impressed after a second inspection as the mana in the accessory flowed perfectly. The magic released at the end of the era of destruction still seemed present and bore all the signs. He was very pleased, having purchased 8 artifacts from that era for such a low price. Morris grabbed the little bag in which the jewels had been brought to him. He celebrated as he placed them inside, thinking it was truly his lucky day. Suddenly, he felt someone approaching. His eyes widened in fear. Standing there was a man dressed in black, wearing a frightening black mask. Thus ended the character's participation in that scene of the story. Elsewhere, a huge door came into view. Kim Joo-hyuk opened it with all his strength. He quickly removed the mask from his face because it had been so uncomfortable that he had thought he might die wearing it. That place resembled the cafe from his starting location. He quickly grabbed his cell phone to check his account's transaction history. With that sale, his money troubles were solved, and he celebrated his earnings from the 8 rings in the vault. Kim Joo-hyuk felt very happy because he still had many of them stored, so he wouldn't face any problems from now on. Suddenly, a suspicious notification popped up on his cell phone. It was a call from an unknown number. He answered quickly without hesitation. The woman on the other end of the line immediately invited him to have a meal together. He asked how she had gotten his number, and she hurriedly explained that she was a teacher from Valhalla. And soon she gives him instructions for the location of the meal without giving the boy any chance to question her, leaving him quite annoyed because she had hung up on him. Kim Joo-hyuk then decides to go to the location since he had nothing better to do, and the silly girl was going to spend all her money just to make him eat for free, thus concluding the scenes of this very unusual invitation. Once again, we return to the scene of the man in the black mask and black clothes. Morris asks why that man is there, and the man questions if their relationship is really that bad. Morris explains that a normal merchant cannot simply talk to the owner of the market, even if they've met a few times. That man standing there was the owner of the place known as the Black Cat, who comments that he greatly admires the merchant for treating him in that way. Morris asks why the black cat is there again. He explains that it's nothing significant, just that the merchant's participation in the auction for the first time in a long while seemed very strange to him. Morris quickly comments that the anonymity of the registrations seemed to be very flawed after all. The black cat explains that as the real owner of the market was a constellation, he could access any information they wanted, and he immediately asked to see the items listed for the auction. Morris agrees without any issue, though thinking that the black cat's interest in all of this was very strange as it was his first time doing this. He quickly throws the black bag containing the items from the era of destruction onto the table, leaving the little black cat deep in thought and speechless. He soon comments on the value of those objects, leaving Morris confused about what he was talking about so suddenly. Out of nowhere, a panel appears saying that the constellation on the other side is watching in shock. The message repeats incessantly on the device. The black cat quickly realizes that his constellation desperately wanted that ring, concluding this chapter of the story. In another location at the Valhalla restaurant, a fork gently wraps around the pasta, which looks quite delicious, and is soon brought toward the mouth. The teacher then savors the food slowly and comments that it is very delicious and tasty. But soon she seems a little confused, quickly asking why Kim Joo-hyuk isn't eating, to which he replies that he's just wondering how Valhalla has a place like this. She explains that besides the school cafeteria and the staff restaurant, there's also a normal place like this. But Kim Joo-hyuk isn't very interested in it. He then asks why she called him there. She's speechless for a brief moment. Then she quickly invites him to be her assistant, which he immediately declines. The teacher asks him not to refuse so quickly, as he would gain many benefits as an intern. She pleads with him to listen for a bit because it was obvious she would make this request. Kim Joo-hyuk shows a tiny bit of interest, asking about those benefits. The teacher says he would receive a scholarship and other financial aid, but he still isn't very interested. He would have the chance to write a paper with his mentor and could write about the 3 types of attacks on monsters. If that happened, his name would be listed in the World Association of Monster Research, gaining much glory and wealth, but he still doesn't care. The teacher keeps trying to convince him, even offering more days off from school, but Kim Joo-hyuk remains unimpressed, leaving her deep in thought about her next persuasive proposal. She tries to appeal to his oversized ego and fails miserably. Frustrated, she tries to end the conversation by imposing that he become her assistant. Kim Joo-hyuk responds again that he doesn't want to, thinking that her proposals weren't tempting or decent enough to accept. His urgent goal at that moment was to reach the center of the Great Forest, and even with the teacher as his instructor, it would be difficult to pass the performance evaluation. The protagonist then delivers a checkmate in the conversation, firmly stating that he doesn't want to be an assistant or write papers, leaving her very upset. The teacher quickly proposes to exchange information instead. She suggests giving some news of interest to Kim Joo-hyuk in exchange for the mysteries of the impressive monster attacks. He's interested in this, quickly learning that the gossip was about Choi Erin. Kim Joo-hyuk soon says he's no longer interested, while thinking he was only helping the girl, but then hears that she might be disowned by her own family. He's left a bit speechless upon hearing this, and quickly tries to leave, leaving his teacher desperate. Kim Joo-hyuk explains that he's finished eating and the benefits weren't attractive enough, so he should leave. The teacher becomes very angry because she expected some information in return. He tries to explain that he doesn't care, but has already heard everything. Kim Joo-hyuk asks permission to ask something he's very curious about. He asks why the teacher seems so strict in class despite being overly childish. She explains that as she teaches about mysterious monsters, many problems would arise if they were treated as a joke. The attacks could directly impact the students' survival rate, and since they were somewhat foolish, more strictness was required. Kim Joo-hyuk thinks it's all just a simple ideology, but it wasn't only that, it was the duty of a true teacher. He mockingly scoffs at these things in a very arrogant manner. As he was about to leave, the teacher calls out to him again. She presses him for information but doesn't succeed, thus ending these funny and tense scenes of the story. Meanwhile, in Sejong at the Choijin family's temple, a man was seated at a table in front of 2 young people. The guild leader, Choi Jan-seok, had called them there to ask about their intentions before the classification test to uphold the family's reputation. One of the young people present was from the group True History, a combat leader and the eldest son of the Choijin family, Choi Jinjin. The second person was also a member of the Choijin family, known as Choi Erin. The leader began explaining that if they passed the classification test, they would have the chance to form a contract through Cheongwoldo, one of the sacred relics, a testament to the rightful successors in the family. But there was a huge caveat if they failed. They would be literally cut off and expelled from the family without any further ado. Choi Jan-seok then asked if they were truly willing to go through with it. The boy affirmed without hesitation. Choi Erin also responded the same way without a second thought, and soon both were stared at by the leader for a few moments. Deep in thought, Choi Jan-seok decided to relay all the necessary information. He explained that the test would take place in 3 weeks, and that they could leave the premises for now, which they affirmed. The two then began walking slowly toward the exit. Suddenly, Choi Jinjin asked if the girl hadn't managed to read the stars. She looked a bit confused as she hadn't quite understood the question. The boy then asked if she hadn't noticed their father's reaction when she confirmed her participation in the test. She remained silent, pondering that for a few seconds. Her brother commented that Choi Arin was evidently eager to become the family leader, and also to prove herself as a fully legitimate daughter. Hearing this, the girl began to get quite angry. Yet her brother continued to tease her, commenting on her threatening expression and doubting her chances of succeeding in the test. Choi Jinjin kept mocking her, saying she hadn't even received a blessing from a constellation and wouldn't be a match for him already with a foreign contract. The girl appeared deeply saddened to hear all this from her own family member. He mocked her further, saying she might as well give up and continue leeching off the family's wealth, but it would cost her dearly. He said he would see her in exactly 3 weeks. He then left, leaving the vulnerable and cute girl alone in that space. She soon began having visions of a woman from her past. The woman had told Choi Arin to become the family leader because, with that goal achieved, she would be free to do whatever she wanted. She quickly opened her eyes, her expression now fearless and determined to face her challenges in the upcoming chapters of the story. Meanwhile, in classroom 1A, all the students were attentively following the teacher's lesson, except for Kim Joo-hyuk, who seemed very thoughtful at that moment. He was impressed because Brace was worrying about the time of the school's midterm exams. The protagonist explained that he usually didn't pay attention in class, so he didn't care much about what the teacher was explaining. That gray-haired teacher mentioned that everyone should already know the importance of Valhalla's midterm exams, because in both the midterm and final exams, students with the lowest grades were immediately expelled, so they needed to organize themselves well. The teacher also urged them to prepare thoroughly for both the theoretical and practical tests to avoid low scores. Kim Joo-hyuk was more concerned about the theoretical test than the practical one, as he was already very skilled at the latter. He thought he needed to stay in that school until he could reach the center of the Great Forest, even though he didn't know how to get there. So he quickly decided to call Barch, who responded immediately. He asked if Barchi had already attended most of those classes, receiving an affirmative reply. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately decided that Barchi would take the test for him, leaving the latter very confused about this. You would only check his opponent's responses to tell if something was wrong. Barki thought this was a bit unfair as it felt like a representative was taking his test, but Kim Joo-hyuk countered, saying everything would work that way one way or another, so he should just do it alone. Meanwhile, the professor concluded the class for the day, wishing everyone good work, to which they responded affirmatively. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately grabbed his backpack to leave the place, but suddenly someone called him as he was on his way out. He quickly asked what that little girl wanted. She questioned whether there would be training that day. The protagonist replied affirmatively, asking why she was asking. But Choi Erin explained she didn't want to stop, leaving him a bit confused. Kim Joo-hyuk then asked if she wanted to learn fencing, since it was already time to start that process, considering she probably didn't even know how to use a simple sword. He explained that it wasn't fencing or martial arts, but that he would show her how to handle some weapons. Thinking that besides this, it was also past time for her to practice with her own weapon. He quickly told her to meet him at the academy's training hall, to which she agreed, concluding this scene from chapter 17. Already in the school's training center, Kim Joo-hyuk asked Choi Erin how long it had been since she used her sword. She replied that it had been a day and a half since she last touched it, as she had been focused on strength training. Her trainer quickly discovered that before that, she practiced every single day. He asked her to show him her sword immediately. She then grasped her weapon's hilt firmly and drew it out with seriousness and care. Kim Joo-hyuk then began instructing her on more professional techniques for using the weapon, leaving her a bit confused about the position of her ring and pinky fingers. But when she finally got the positioning of her hands and wrists right, something magical happened. She didn't understand what was going on at the moment, but it was the mana from her sword manifesting beautifully. Choi Erin thought she hadn't even infused magic into it. It felt more secure and stable than before, even when held with both hands. Kim Joo-hyuk then asked her to attack him with all her strength. She responded affirmatively without hesitation. He quickly began drawing his sword firmly, and then brandished it, facing his weak little student. She warned him she was about to begin her attacks. She immediately started running toward her opponent, the professor. In doing so, she began noticing something strange about her foot speed. Kim Joo-hyuk easily defended her blow without any effort. He commented that the little girl had gotten much faster, but there was a caveat. He quickly instructed her not to use too much unnecessary magic on her feet. She responded with affirmation and understanding. Once again, she prepared her beautiful sword to restart her attacks, while firmly planting her feet on the ground with all her focus. Finally, she darted toward her professor, delivering a quick and well-planned strike. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately commented that her charge had been very good, but there was a catch when she stopped. She needed to rotate her body a bit more. Choi Erin said she understood those instructions for improving her strikes. Kim Joo-hyuk quickly asked her to attack him without mercy again. She replied with an unhesitant okay. She quickly began implementing her battle strategies, trying to land several strikes on Kim Joo-hyuk's chest. Her attacks were so fast that the sword left trails of light in the air. The protagonist tirelessly tried to dodge those blows, successfully doing so as her sword only hit the ground. The two stared at each other briefly after that, Choi Erin thought everything was going as expected, while she bravely faced her opponent, trying to strike him mercilessly, with no intent to give up. She was much stronger now thanks to Kim Joo-hyuk's impressive and useful training, who faced her bravely with a calm and serene demeanor amidst the battle. The duel was so intense that their swords clashed mid-fight, ending this tense and productive chapter. The sun was already setting over the Grand School of Valhalla. The scene then shifted to the training room in the area where Choi Erin and Kim Joo-hyuk were still training hard. The little girl was already very tired, her breathing heavy. Her trainer then announced that an hour had passed, deciding to end the training for the day, to which she agreed affirmatively. The girl in the pink outfit soon sat down, breathing heavily and visibly exhausted from the battle. She watched her trainer sheath his sword. She thought that his weapon handling was sharper than ever and couldn't even be compared to his skills during the opening ceremony. However, there was still one major issue. She hadn't even managed to match Kim Joo-hyuk, even though she had clearly asked him to teach her the sword technique. She quickly called out to Kim Joo-hyuk after processing all of this. She asked him to duel her again at the next suitable opportunity. This left him slightly confused by her unexpected request. He thought it was definitely useful to duel with Choi Erin, in addition to being fun to teach her, as she was very talented and hardworking. He had sensed her familiarity with the sword technique during the entrance ceremony, even though she was out of breath, unlike him. In any case, thanks to her familiarity with the weapon style, she could help him regain his sense of technique. If it had been 300 years ago, she would have easily been his disciple. Choi Erin asked again if they would duel one more time. Kim Joo-hyuk thought for a moment and decided to tease her, saying he didn't want to at all. Choi Erin simply agreed, leaving her trainer a bit disappointed that she gave up so easily. She explained that it was because he was completely right. She thought that if she followed Kim Joo-hyuk's advice to the letter, she would definitely become much stronger. Slightly disappointed by her remark about him being correct, he replied that it was fine and that training was over for the day. Choi Erin said she would see him next time, and he responded affirmatively, ending these scenes of the chapter. Now we are at the Grand Valhalla Stadium. It was Yoo So-yeon's first time there since the opening ceremony. Oh Si-hyuk thought about the number of first-year students present, as he hadn't expected so many people. Choi Erin simply observed everything silently and quietly, saying absolutely nothing. Kim Joo-hyuk wondered why everyone was gathered there in that place. Race replied, saying that the teacher had told him about this 2 weeks ago, leaving him quite confused as it had been so long ago. Suddenly, the head instructor called for attention as he was about to explain Valhalla's midterm exams. The first practical evaluation was a dungeon raid. All students would form groups to enter an artificial location, which was already being constructed right in front of them. While all the students were gathered, the senior instructor announced that they were free to choose groups of up to 8 members. The evaluation would be based solely on the level of contribution during the dungeon raid. And there was also a very important elimination criterion. If the allocated time ran out, everything would end immediately. The senior instructor also made it clear that the dungeon difficulty level was F+. He then gave the order to start the exam immediately. The timer began counting down right away, and murmurs, along with the desperation to form teams, quickly spread among the Valhalla students. The teacher and senior instructor agreed on the students' eagerness, but there was a catch to all this. Yoo So-yeon remarked that the dealer in her team wasn't good enough and looked for someone else, even though the boy claimed he could handle it without any issues. She thought she didn't need to choose someone better than herself, as 5 hours was enough time for 8 people in a dungeon of such a low level. Because what mattered was contribution, and a team of 6 members could combine good skills and great talents. She quickly gave the command to start, while also considering how difficult it would be to stand out in the task. The senior instructor thought everything was as expected, as a 5th-generation child understood the exam's objective, while the rest of the students didn't. They would usually enter with a group of 20 people, or typically with teams of 8 members. And if a team wasn't well balanced, conflicts would occur, making these 3 outcomes plausible. After considering this, the instructor told the teacher that in 30 minutes the students would enter the dungeon, requiring readiness for the evaluation, to which the teacher affirmed. Meanwhile, Kim Joo-hyuk stood still amid it all, wondering if the students who had already entered were being evaluated. He was a bit confused and lost about everything happening in the place. Choi Erin was also there alone, quiet and shy. Kim Joo-hyuk quickly realized that she hadn't entered the dungeon yet. He immediately asked her what she was planning to do, since everyone else was already prepared and inside the dangerous location. Choi Erin promptly replied that she would do whatever Kim Joo-hyuk told her to do, leaving him slightly confused after hearing this. He thinks about when to come over the girl, as she had been trying to follow his words like a sword since the last training session. Soon, Kim Joo-hyuk says he will enter completely alone. She responds that she will also enter without a companion, but he doesn't care much, as everything seemed quite easy in his eyes. He then leaves, leaving her alone. She remains silent and unresponsive after all that. Some boys comment about Choi Erin being alone and without a group. One of them decides to approach her, looking to start a conversation. He tries to convince her to join his group with a sweet and kind invitation, but she apologizes and says she will enter alone, rejecting everything. The boy tries to stop her, saying she would likely be eliminated easily. Choi Erin responds that she will manage because Kim Joo-hyuk said it wasn't difficult. This leaves the boy even more worried and exasperated. But all this advice is ignored and futile as she enters the dungeon alone, concluding this chapter of the story. Everyone at the Valhalla Stadium had already entered their respective dungeons along with their groups. Meanwhile, they were being monitored from the observation room. The professor watched everyone attentively, remaining silent and focused. Suddenly, a monstrous being appeared in one of the group's dungeons, and soon Bi-yoon Kyeonyeon earned 2 precious points. Bi-ba Yeji scored 1 more point than him. Meanwhile, Bi-yoon Jinsu managed to secure only 1 point. The senior instructor observed everything with a serious and focused expression. The professor thought everything was going as expected, as the scoring system was difficult, highlighting the rigor of the training, and they were evaluating with speed and precision without errors. When Lee Sang-chul was active, they called him the Clear Master because he was a legendary contractor with a 99% success rate. The professor believed he understood the essentials of dungeon attacks better than anyone, which allowed him to evaluate so effectively and deserved immense respect. Meanwhile, he was watching everything happening on the battlefield, thinking it was an excellent year overall. He believed the 5th-generation students were active as a whole, and among them, there was an exceptional student, the impressive and fearless Yoon So-yeon. At that moment, she was giving orders for positioning and actions to her teammates. They were in a frantic battle against the monstrous beings in the dungeon, which attacked them mercilessly. Yoon So-yeon quickly informed her team that the front line could not fall under any circumstances, and immediately ordered all archers to shoot. The minister groaned in pain and agony from the arrow's hits, while Yoon So-yeon attacked him mercilessly, with precise and powerful strikes, eliminating him after the intense battle and causing him to disappear as a hologram in the simulation. Lee Sang-chul thought all of that was incredible, as it resembled a standard dungeon attack. Yoon So-yeon had to find fixed roles for the team members to perform, managing to score points and even form an effective midline with the group. In any case, if she performed well in the bi-monthly exams, it was only a matter of time before she returned to the top. Because if not for Kim Joo-hyuk at the entrance ceremony, her record would not have been tarnished. After thinking about all this, Lee Sang-chul decided to check how the story's protagonist was doing in the practical test. An error appeared on the panel indicating that he hadn't been found. This left the senior instructor very confused, as the search machine could easily retrieve all the students' information in the dungeon. He became very tense and worried about the situation, and soon decided to check the list of completed artificial dungeons in the bi-monthly exam. He quickly discovered that Kim Joo-hyuk had completed the test in just 23 minutes and 32 seconds, ranking first in the practical test leaderboard. Lee Sang-chul was impressed because the boy had completed everything without a group entirely on his own. What was even more impressive was the short completion time of just 23 minutes and 32 seconds. Even so, the senior instructor was skeptical of the boy and wanted to review the footage, doubting the capabilities of a 17-year-old student. The recording quickly appeared on the control panel, and there was Kim Joo-hyuk, simply standing there holding his sword. He seemed calm and composed in the face of his enormous challenge. In front of him were numerous monstrous beings intent on intimidating and eliminating him. But the boy merely stretched slowly and calmly in front of it all, and soon began running swiftly toward those ugly opponents, who observed everything with fiery determination in their eyes, grunting loudly with the intent to intimidate him. But Kim Joo-hyuk remained calm, his expression filled with anger and determination to complete his mission successfully without a moment of hesitation. He soon delivered precise and powerful strikes to the monsters, leaving the remaining ones filled with rage and fury. He was cutting through the wild goblins effortlessly. His face was calm and focused on his mission. He stood against 2 enormous and ferocious enemies. They roared loudly, trying to scare him. But Kim Joo-hyuk quickly rushed toward them, preparing to deliver a precise strike to both, and soon destroyed them, bidding farewell to the orcs. All the missions were completed quickly, leaving the superiors impressed, astonished, and speechless. But one target still remained on the battlefield. He faced that giant monstrous being without uttering a single word. Lee Sang-chul, watching the scene, thought that the enhanced golem was specifically simulated for the midterm exam to challenge groups of 8 people. The golem was massive and fearless, showing no signs of weakness, and Kim Joo-hyuk seemed very excited to face it at that moment. He soon delivered a precise and powerful blow to the chest of the special golem, which was immediately defeated with great ease, and began to disappear in his simulation hologram. Seeing all of this, Lee Sang-chul was impressed. He quickly decided who would take first place in that midterm exam. Clearly, it was Kim Joo-hyuk, thus concluding this chapter of the story. A group was already leaving the dungeon, extremely weakened and worn out from all the battles they had faced. Another team exited more animatedly, with happy and victorious expressions. Yoon So-yeon wore a sour expression, clearly in a bad mood. That blonde boy also had an angry look on his face, and Choi Erin stood there silently, observing everything. Kim Joo-hyuk was also present at the scene as the midterm exams concluded. The narrative then shifted to the teacher's lounge away from the Valhalla Stadium. The teacher was attentively observing the students' ranking table for the midterm exams. He made a face of total shock and surprise at what he saw on the tablet. He quickly approached and informed Lee Sang-shul that the results had been officially published. He explained that the results were unexpected, as Kim Joo-hyuk had ended up in first place on the ranking. This was met with the response that those results were indeed very surprising. Lee Sang-shul had expected the boy to take first place, but completing the dungeon alone and unscathed was utterly impressive. If he matured and entered the industry, South Korea could regain its title as the #1 in the world. The teacher then discovered that this award was given to the strongest professional in the world. Lee Sang-shul expressed his enthusiasm and amazement, stating that it had been a long time since so many geniuses had appeared. He also mentioned there would be a surprise in this exam according to the teacher. It was definitely the cute girl Choi Eun. Kim Joo-hyuk's time was unbelievable, but they hadn't expected her to secure second place instead of Yoo Soyeon. Lee Sang-shul didn't know what had happened, but Choi Eun had decided to challenge the dungeon alone, just like the protagonist of the story, and she had taken very little time to finish it, despite coming out injured, successfully completing the dungeon. The senior instructor knew she was a quiet and hardworking type, but never thought she'd be the kind of person capable of finishing such a challenge on her own. If the exam had focused solely on teamwork, Yoo Soyeon would have undoubtedly had the highest score, but Kim Joo-hyuk and Choi Eun received better scores. However, even with these results, Lee Sang-shul would never recommend this path for students. Both agreed that this wasn't something ordinary trainees could accomplish. The teacher couldn't stop thinking about Choi Eun. He had met her when he was an executive in a guild, during which she had a weak aura, and how she decided to face the dungeon alone remained a mystery. The teacher suspected the reason for this was Kim Joo-hyuk, but he couldn't believe what he was thinking. So he decided to put those thoughts aside to prepare the students' grades. The next day, the students checked their scores on a paper posted on the school board. The spreadsheet displayed the results of all first-year students, and Kim Joo-hyuk was undeniably in first place. Rockdale Ventrick and his assistant Julia de Palace observed this with great anger and fury. He immediately asked her if Desera was in South Korea, to which she confirmed affirmatively. He then ordered the girl to make a call to him and get ready to leave immediately, thus ending these tense scenes of the story. In the great city of Seoul Jamsil, night had fallen and the lights illuminated the streets. Rockdale Ventrick and his assistant, Julia de Palace, calmly arrived at the restaurant. Someone greeted him rather rudely right away. It was Desera Ventrick, and it had been a long time since they'd seen each other in person. Rockdale immediately sat at the table with his friend. The man ate like a classless animal. The blonde man in black clothes watched with deep disgust and contempt. Then a conversation began, initiated by Desera Ventrick. He asked what the target Kim Joo-hyuk had been doing. He was told that nothing much, just acting like a fool full of himself, and that he had caused considerable embarrassment due to his humble origins, for which he would have to pay immediately. Desera then asked if he could kill the target in one go. Rockdale replied that the decision was entirely in his hands. The brute then said he needed to prepare the council properly, leaving the preppy man confused by the statement. He immediately pointed his finger at someone. He was pointing at Julia de Palace because, thanks to her, there had been a significant conflict with that family. Desera wasn't sure if it was due to the number of people in the group, but he had already killed some because rumors had spread far. But the people in Valhalla were different, as their feats weren't impacted by causing chaos there. Rockdale understood everything from his friend's words. He promised to do his best to organize a scenario so that he wouldn't have to worry. The deal was sealed, and Desera also demanded a good reward for the mission. Thus concluded this part of the story. A week later, Brace, talking to Kim Joo-hyuk, discovered that he was filing a request to leave the school again. Brace was a bit confused, but the protagonist explained that he had permission to leave the school once more. If he performed well in one of the exams, he would receive another opportunity to leave, according to Brace. Kim Joo-hyuk confirmed this, not wanting to miss the chance to check his grades. The man in glasses asked where the protagonist was going, ending this scene of the story. The setting shifted to the province of Suwon. Kim Joo-hyuk was already heading toward his goal, checking his phone for the location, which seemed very close. Suddenly, someone intimidatingly called out to him. It was Desera Ventrick, with a terrifying look in his eyes, saying it was a pleasure to meet him, concluding this chapter of the story. The plot begins in the market of Area 7. The boss, Black Cat, was observing his enterprise from the top of a building, deeply focused, wearing his highly intimidating black mask. Suddenly, he spotted something that put him on high alert. It was the constellation on the other side asking when the ring would arrive in their hands. Black Cat responded, saying it was already on its way and would go through normal procedures before arriving via the portal. The ruler on the other side said he was utterly insane. Black Cat wondered what was happening. At the request of the former black feline, he had been researching whether this was indeed an artifact from the era of destruction, but such a reaction was unprecedented. Suddenly, a noise beside him caught his attention. A black box had just arrived through the magical portal. Black Cat celebrated its arrival, thinking it would likely appease those concerned with its contents. Finally, he began to open it with his hands, and soon the highly magical ring was revealed. He then informed the constellation that the accessory had arrived. but there was no response, leaving him puzzled. A message soon appeared saying they were present. It began repeating uncontrollably, ending this scene of the chapter. In another part of the story, back in the province of Suwon, Kim Joo-hyuk asked the man who he was. The bothersome man mocked him, saying he didn't need to know such information. Kim Joo-hyuk presumed the man wanted something from him. He was entirely correct, as there was no other reason for them to meet in such a remote, massive mountain. The protagonist asked if the man's intention was to eliminate him. He received an immediate and affirmative response. The man explained that it wasn't just his good intuition. Anyone could tell the boy's intentions simply by observing him. Kim Joo-hyuk had figured it out a few days earlier. Dizzer lost his composure upon hearing those words, stating that for someone ranked first in Valhalla, the protagonist seemed foolish and petty. He then charged toward him, demanding not to be disappointed. He prepared an extremely powerful and potent attack, but impressively, Kim Joo-hyuk dodged the punch effortlessly, making his opponent crash into a tree nearby. The cocky guy even groaned in pain afterward. His hand had literally split the strong wood of the tree in half, making it fall to the ground immediately. Dizzer remarked that Kim Joo-hyuk was lucky to have dodged the punch, as otherwise he'd already be dead. Kim Joo-hyuk provoked him, saying the punch was too slow, dismissing the idea of luck being involved. But he thought there was a catch to all of this. That opponent was undeniably strong, seemingly on the same level or even more powerful than Osiyuk. Still, it was dangerous for him to block such a punch with his fragile body, and his strategy to win the battle was very simple. Out of nowhere, Kim Joo-hyuk started running quickly, leaving his enemy confused about what was happening, because he was fleeing, forcing the boy to chase after him. For someone in Kim Joo-hyuk's position, fleeing was a wise choice, according to Dizzer, as he would have been beaten to death if he had done nothing. But the persistent brat definitely wouldn't let him escape. Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk stopped his fast run abruptly, and asked if his enemy wasn't at least using that rotten brain of his. Dizzer wondered how the boy had gotten so close, as he hadn't even noticed his punch until it was right in front of his eyes. And then he took a crushing blow straight to his ugly face. The impact was so powerful that it sent him flying away instantly, making him crash to the ground, groaning in immense pain and agony. And when he finally managed to open his eyes, he was met with a terrifying sight. It was Kim Joo-hyuk's foot approaching to stomp right in the middle of his face, but he quickly dodged the crushing stomp. If he hadn't, it would have surely ended him for good. Even the ground couldn't withstand the force of that stomp. Kim Joo-hyuk was impressed by this, because the guy was very lucky and managed to dodge it so quickly. After hearing this, Dizzer became furious and enraged, and he asked what Kim Joo-hyuk had done. Kim Joo-hyuk responded by stating his rank in Valhalla, as his opponent should already know. This made Dizzer even angrier and more infuriated with the overwhelming strength, thus ending this scene in the story. The narrative continues at the Ventric family's residence, where, in the past, they had used the blonde boy's talent to slightly boost their own status. That talent was an innate aptitude for elixirs. The boy was drinking an entire elixir. He was capable of consuming any potion without any issues, and his parents had given him some very expensive ones to drink. Suddenly, the glass bottle slipped from his hands and shattered completely on the floor. At 16, the boy had already become stronger than an adult. His parents wanted to use him to gain recognition for the family, but there was a catch to this. Dizzer stared intently at his guardians in this scene. Suddenly, his expression turned completely furious and psychotic. It became clear that he didn't want to spend his entire life under their control. In this scene, his father was shown lying dead on the ground. His body was sprawled in the mud. Dizzer overwhelming power meant he no longer needed to worry about the family's recognition. His sister entered the scene with a very angry and furious expression. The boy was definitely a thorn in the Ventric family's side, and he was ultimately expelled by a member pretending to be the family head. But he didn't care, as all of his problems were solved with money, and he had grown even bolder after cutting ties with the family. When he received a request from Rockdale Ventric, there was a lot of money at stake, but his interest in Kim Joo-hyuk was much greater. Kim Joo-hyuk had placed first in the entrance exam for Valhalla, and rumors said he was a crazy guy who cursed and kicked all guild scouts out of there. It could be fun to mess with someone like that, and Dizzer sought entertainment in it. But there was a catch to this whole story. The question was who exactly this guy was. Returning from Dizzer imagination, Kim Joo-hyuk called out to him. He asked what kind of drug he had used to become so strong, since elixirs were far too expensive for an orphan to acquire. This left the boy quite puzzled. He soon started laughing at his opponent's assumption, because it was hilarious to think that he was probably being accused of using steroids. The guy seemed like a cheat who abused drugs. But Dizzer didn't care about such accusations and asked again how the boy had become so strong. Kim Joo-hyuk responds that he has never used drugs, and his strength is the result of intense training and rigorous exercise. He adds that in some ways, Dizzer could be compared to Osiyuk, but it would be very rude to compare a naturally muscular man to a little druggie. After hearing this, Dizzer becomes extremely angry and enraged with Kim Joo-hyuk. Though he lacked the power to use his trump card, he decides to draw his magical sword nonetheless. Kim Joo-hyuk is quite confused by the display of magical power. Dizzer can feel his power growing significantly. He then calls the protagonist to a big battle. declaring that he wouldn't let him get away so easily. But suddenly, he takes a hard, painful punch to the face. After landing the blow, Kim Joo-hyuk mocks him, remarking that no smart opponent would wait for their adversary to prepare for an attack. Dizera flies a long distance, screaming in pain and agony. Not satisfied, the protagonist charges at him again mercilessly, landing another strong, powerful strike on his ugly opponent's face. The screams of pain grow even louder from the brutal blows. Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk desperately demands that he calm down. Dizera, now weakened and dazed, struggles to stay conscious. The protagonist angrily chastises him, saying he couldn't lose consciousness yet. He adds that he might have forgiven him if this was just a petty quarrel. But the earlier truth revealed about handling oneself removed any chance of immediate pardon or amnesty. Still, Kim Joo-hyuk had something to ask him. Dizera, with a completely destroyed and hopeless expression, listens as Kim Joo-hyuk tells him to clench his teeth tightly, while preparing another painful blow. This dramatic, vengeful, and merciless moment concludes the scene of this chapter. Now we shift to the grand dormitory of the enormous Valhalla Academy, specifically in Rockdale Ventrick's room, the arrogant little brat. He's thinking that by now, Dizera Ventrick should have dealt with Kim Joo-hyuk, and given his personality, might have even killed him. Though cleaning up Dizera's messes was annoying, at least it wasn't on school grounds this time, which made the moment perfect for Rockdale, leaving him feeling very relieved. Suddenly, he calls for his assistant, Julia de Palace, who promptly responds affirmatively. He orders her to fetch a car immediately, and she agrees without hesitation. Out of nowhere, a familiar noise comes from his phone. It was supposedly Dizera calling at that opportune moment. He asks if Hyunnim had already finished off Kim Joo-hyuk, but no one responds immediately, leaving a tense, eerie silence on the line. Once again, Rockdale Ventrick calls for Hyunnim, only to hear a terrifying groan. The screams of pain, agony, and despair don't stop at any moment during the call. Suddenly, someone begins speaking on the line, heightening Rockdale Ventrick's tension. It is Kim Joo-hyuk, speaking calmly and coldly. He translates Dizera Ventrick's groaning and agonizing, saying that Dizera wanted Rockdale to burn 2 sticks of incense if he died at that moment, and that Rockdale Ventrick should wait for Kim Joo-hyuk, concluding this tense chapter of the brilliant story. The protagonist tries to call Rockdale Ventrick on the phone again, but only hears a click as the call disconnects. He becomes very angry at Rockdale Ventrick's rudeness for hanging up on him without replying or saying goodbye. He begins to rationalize a few things. The first thought is what to do with Dizera Ventrick, who was unconscious and debilitated in front of him. Meanwhile, far away, a cup of tea is poured into a beautiful teacup, served on an elegant saucer. Julia de Palace informs her annoying boss that his tea is ready. He remains completely silent, saying not a word. Julia tries to inform him again, but is quickly cut off by his rudeness and arrogance. Delicately, she says she understands his offensive words, leaves the tea there, and departs immediately. Rockdale Ventrick cannot stop thinking about his powerful enemy, Kim Joo-hyuk. He never imagined the boy could defeat Dizera even after the incidents with Lyric, and now he's left with a huge question about what to do. Now he knows who is behind everything, and it's likely that Dizera ruined the entire plan. It's only a matter of time before the news reaches the family, spiraling out of control. Rockdale Ventrick tries to convince himself that the problem isn't that big. Since Kim Joo-hyuk comes from such humble origins, he wouldn't be able to reach them. The blonde boy decided out of caution not to talk about these matters for a while and simply lay low, concluding all of his desperate thoughts. Now return to Kim Joo-hyuk's journey through the forest. Brace and the protagonist conversed telepathically about Dizera Ventrick's cunning and the plan to expose him in the future, since there was nothing they could do at the moment. The guy with the odd glasses asked why Kim Joo-hyuk hadn't just killed that show-off boy. He replied that past matters shouldn't be confused with the present, and the question was understood. Besides, Brace had another question, which piqued his friend's curiosity. The question was about the magic Dizera Ventrick had used moments before, because that magic seemed oddly familiar. Kim Joo-hyuk appeared confused about this, so Brace explained that while it wasn't confirmed, he had definitely sensed something similar before. The protagonist, speaking with his friend mentally, replied that 300 years ago, monsters sacrificed dogs and cows to use that kind of dark magic. Brace mocked Kim Joo-hyuk, saying he lacked the skill to differentiate people based on magic and was incapable of such abilities, which made him quite annoyed. He then asked if the hidden side of the sword Dizera Ventrick mentioned was related to that power, to which Brace replied with an uncertain maybe. And thus their mental conversation ended. Kim Joo-hyuk asked the show-off boy who had sent him to find him. The boy only groaned in pain, unable to speak a word. Kim Joo-hyuk then realized that Dizera Ventrick's jaw was dislocated due to the beating he had received earlier. He quickly positioned both his thumbs inside the boy's mouth and warned him of the pain he was about to feel before yanking his jaw back into place with all his strength. Afterward, he began another conversation, asking again who had given the order to Dizera Ventrick. The boy stayed silent and thoughtful for a moment. Kim Joo-hyuk stared at him with a very serious expression. He urged him to answer, saying he had fixed his jaw for that purpose alone, and threatened him, stating that staying silent was not the best option at the moment. Dizera Ventrick asked why he was holding his fingers. Kim Joo-hyuk suddenly made a sharp motion with the boy's hand. He screamed loudly in pain and agony as his fingers were completely twisted. The protagonist threatened his opponent again to extract the information he wanted. Desira Ventric revealed that his brother had sent him on that mission. Kim Joo-hyuk had already suspected it was that guy who had stirred up trouble once before. He immediately asked for all the information about the affiliation of that brute, as he didn't seem to belong to Valhalla. Desira Ventric replied uncertainly, then threatened the protagonist, saying he would find out another way. After hearing this mockery, Kim Joo-hyuk broke 2 more of the boy's fingers. He then revealed that Desira was from the first species and worked as a mercenary handling various assignments. Kim Joo-hyuk had heard of such a group before and mocked him, saying the boy was just a bully who got paid for his deeds. Desira replied that Kim Joo-hyuk saw everyone as trash and was just a lucky guy. He then revealed that the constellation revered by the first species was the hidden side of the sword, and that he also had a contract with it. Naturally, he added that if he had had 30 more seconds to charge his magic, the outcome of the fight would have been entirely different. Kim Joo-hyuk told Desira he talked too much, and that he would have let him go if he had just shut up and named the person who sent him without stalling. Once again, he shoved his thumbs into the boy's mouth and told him he looked much better silent, while dislocating the boy's jaw again, thus ending this tense scene of the chapter. Many messages appeared on Kim Joo-hyuk's phone. As expected, everyone agreed that those guys were a malicious group. Still, the protagonist was upset because he couldn't find the notes, and Rockdale Ventric continued to make him look suspicious. He thought about how to ruin that show-off brat's life, concluding that at this time he should use more modern methods. First, he had recorded all of Desira's confessions, and he needed to quickly find a place to post all that. Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk made a phone call. It was to his teacher, who was quite surprised by it. She thought the boy had finally agreed to be her personal assistant. But that wasn't the reason for his call. He wanted to know if she happened to know any renowned and well-known journalists, thus concluding this tense chapter. News quickly spread about the attempted assassination by the Ventric family targeting a Valhalla student. Numerous reports highlighted the shocking and surprising case. Some people clarified and summarized the chaos that had occurred in internet posts. Consequently, Kim Joo-hyuk's name was revealed on social media, directly linked to the case. He felt pleased with this modern war. Brace praised his adaptation to contemporary culture, to which Kim Joo-hyuk replied that it was all the result of suffering and effort, reading forums and watching the news. Thanks to all of that, Kim Joo-hyuk had been able to become who he was now, fully understanding everything. However, there was a catch in all of this that Bharwu didn't quite grasp. Kim Joo-hyuk explained that his goal was to ruin only Rockdale Ventric, but the news had ended up affecting the entire family. Nevertheless, the journalist recommended by his teacher seemed to be quite famous, causing the story to explode dramatically. By then, a podium for the Ventric family's statement had already been set up. The group's leader was preparing to speak. She was under heavy pressure, with many photos being taken by paparazzi. First, she expressed her sincere apologies to the attacked student and Valhalla Academy. She then gave the official position of the Ventric family regarding the incident. She explained that the attack had been carried out in rebellion by Desira, who had since been excommunicated from the Ventric family. However, in a recorded confession, he alleged that Rockdale had given the order, attempting to escape the dilemma he was in, according to the family head. Thus, she believed the Ventric family had no involvement in the incident. But since it was a crime committed by a banished family member, the moral responsibility to rectify the situation fell on the family. With that, the organization's leader decided to visit the victim to apologize personally. She also mentioned that Rockdale Ventric could indeed be connected in some way to the perpetrator of the crime. As a result, he would return home, where an investigation by the prosecutor's office had been scheduled to resolve all doubts. After finishing her speech, many photos were taken again by the paparazzi. The family head immediately left without answering any questions about her planned apology to the crime victim. Meanwhile, Rockdale Ventric was watching everything on his phone, with a face full of anger and frustration at how far the situation had escalated. Suddenly, a call from his father came through. He answered immediately, without hesitation. His father ordered Rockdale Ventric to return to England for a while, effective immediately. It was a command from the entire family, which he complied with without thinking twice. After hanging up, he was furious and enraged, cursing everything and everyone, leaving his maid, Julia de Palace, utterly frightened, concluding this shocking scene. Meanwhile, Desira was being pressured to reveal who was behind everything. He insisted that the Ventric family was correct, as he alone was behind the crime. Kim Joo-hyuk was quite impressed because the boy was swallowing his pride. Desira despised the Ventric family. The protagonist was left wondering who might apologize to him personally, as the entire situation had already become uncomfortable. Suddenly, he became quite alert to something. He was already near the faculty office. He thought the class might have ended early, uncertain about whom to ask for a favor, concluding these scenes. Now he moved to the Valhalla Cafe. The gray-haired teacher was in a very good mood, but Kim Joo-hyuk replied to her with another no. He already knew she would ask him to be her assistant. It was obvious. She then asked why he had called her, as she was a very busy and overworked person. She was utterly stunned, thinking it might have been a romantic meeting, only to be immediately scolded by Kim Joo-hyuk. She pondered over his words, as they were far from respectful. He replied that they had spoken this way for some time, to which she agreed. Kim Joo-hyuk then explained that the reason for the call wasn't boredom but gratitude for the journalist. He offered to share some information on dealing with monsters, which made her very happy to hear. However, this came with a simple request, which she immediately accepted as it was an easy favor, allowing him a day off from school. The teacher tried to convince him once again to become her assistant, but to no avail, concluding this part of the chapter. Now we move to the Northern Pacific, specifically aboard the criminal transport ship AL-08. Dizera was in one of the cells aboard the vessel. He was furious, as he could never have imagined being thrown onto a ship and treated like cargo to be transferred to the Tower prison. It was a prison in the middle of the North Pacific Ocean, a towering facility. An S-class constellation had created that isolated refuge to turn all contractors into normal human beings. But Dizera didn't care about any of that. He was only staying silent to keep Rockdale from being kicked out of the Ventric family and to have his sentence reduced by 5 years. And 5 measly years meant nothing to him. Suddenly, he heard a loud noise nearby. A bright red light quickly flashed past, unidentifiable. Then someone appeared in front of Dizera, concluding the chapter. The person who had appeared in the previous chapter was Kyuk. He immediately stabbed Dizera in the stomach with a dagger and stood there staring at him, firmly holding the blade in his right hand. Kyuk wished for Dizera's death, saying the first species didn't need someone like him. Dizera groaned in pain from the knife wound in his abdomen, and soon collapsed face first onto the ground, unable to endure it. Kyuk watched him lying there with no intention of helping, then delivered another fatal blow, clearly sealing Dizera's death and ending these dramatic scenes of the chapter. Now we are at the Grand Ventric family mansion. The leader of the group was visibly angry and furious over the recent events. She glared at Rockdale Ventric and his father, Eden Ventric. First, she called out to the show-off boy by name. He responded affirmatively without hesitation. She asked him what he was going to do, leaving him quite confused. Immediately, he responded with a sincere apology. But she thought it was far too little considering the gravity of the problem, and because such apologies wouldn't fix anything at all. The leader then ordered Rockdale Ventric to explain in detail why he had committed such a malicious act, to which he responded without hesitation, concluding that part of the conversation. After the explanation, she stared at him. She understood that he wanted to deal with Kim Joo-hyuk and was right about it. But she was very angry about the whole situation, because the explanation she was receiving was shallow and petty. Rockdale acted alone because he believed Kim Joo-hyuk had insulted the Ventric family, but in truth, it was his own pride, according to the leader. And as a result, he had dragged the family's name through the mud. The leader was undecided on the punishment she would give the show-off boy, and he became desperate, unsure of what to do. He quickly said he would do anything to restore the fallen honor of the Ventric family, but the leader didn't understand what he was saying at that moment, because the only plausible way to restore the Ventric family's honor was by expelling him. The boy's father contested this possibility, arguing that such a punishment was far too severe. Then she asked Eden Ventric if he wanted to be expelled in place of the boy, leaving him somewhat nervous, silent, and unsure of what to say. Meanwhile, the leader thought she would rather see the boy dead or expelled immediately. But that would make it evident that Rockdale Ventric was guilty of ordering Dizera to carry out the assassination attempt. She prepared to address the boy. She called him by name, and he immediately responded affirmatively, kneeling before her. Then she said she wouldn't expel him for now, ordering him to return to Valhalla quietly. And after his encounter with Kim Joo-hyuk, she would reconsider the matter. After hearing this, Rockdale Ventric thanked her sincerely. She also ordered Eden to keep a close watch on his mediocre son, as his position would depend on the boy's behavior, to which he agreed. Then she told everyone to leave immediately, and they obeyed without question. The two left, walking with serious and angry expressions. Eden Ventric then ordered his son to remain silent from now on and avoid acting recklessly. But it seemed his father hadn't understood what the family leader had said. The truth was that Rockdale Ventric would be expelled sooner or later, and with the media keeping a close watch, no action could be taken immediately. But once things calmed down, he would release that revelation, leaving everyone stunned. However, something had to be done before that, considering there was no one left to interfere. And Rockdale Ventric also stated that his father should assist with the plan. Eden simply asked his son to proceed carefully, to which he agreed, thus concluding these dramatic scenes of the 10th chapter. Now, a few days later, we are at Valhalla Academy. Specifically, in the interview room where a conversation was taking place, the teacher explained to Kim Joo-hyuk that the head of the Ventric family would call him to apologize in person. The boy rebuts, stating that it had nothing to do with the group and that she had explicitly highlighted their non-involvement in the incident during the delegation. The professor explains that it was still a good idea to apologize, especially since the woman was probably already on her way to Korea. Kim Joo-hyuk thinks that the family likely wanted to handle Rockdale Ventric's punishment personally, probably attending only because they had no other choice at the moment. And honestly, he found it very irritating. After that, the professor expresses his and instructor Lee Sang-shul's concerns about the situation. He also mentions that according to the event protocols, a Valhalla student had been attacked, and the perpetrator had confessed to being ordered by someone. However, there was a catch. He couldn't believe the family's attempts to preserve their reputation by dismissing the evidence, though they seemed busy trying to cover up the truth. To protect the students, either Rockdale or the family leader needed to be expelled. But, according to the professor, the group had donated a significant amount of money to the school in the past. He couldn't believe that Valhalla's funds came solely from donations, so the school would likely turn a blind eye if they paid well. Kim Joo-hyuk understood everything his professor said and affirmed that he would have a conversation with the family head. The professor was stunned by something at that moment. It was the boy's reaction and had been very composed. Kim Joo-hyuk replied that he had always been like that. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. The professor informed him that the family head had arrived and that he would let her in. He then left, wishing them a good conversation. He quickly opened the door for the woman, bowing to her at the first visual contact and welcoming her with a sincere greeting, which she returned with gratitude. She entered the room slowly, meeting Kim Joo-hyuk. Adelia Ventrick introduced herself and greeted the boy. He greeted her in return, concluding this chapter. The chapter begins with Adelia Ventrick sitting across from Kim Joo-hyuk. The two stare at each other for a brief moment without saying a word. Then she began discussing the incident with Desera, immediately offering a deep and sincere apology. Kim Joo-hyuk retorted that since Desera was being expelled, everything was fine so far. She responded that she had heard rumors about Rockdale Ventrick also causing trouble for him, to which he replied it had only happened once and was in the past. As she pointed out that Rockdale Ventrick had nothing to do with the incident, there would be no public statements, according to the boy. Adelia stated that she needed to have a serious conversation with Kim Joo-hyuk about this case. She emphasized the creation of an official statement, but the media and citizens weren't giving it much attention. Kim Joo-hyuk agreed, thinking that the family was known for lying, which is why no one believed them. So she proposed creating an opportunity to resolve the misunderstanding. She then asked if Kim Joo-hyuk could help them, to which he responded with a firm no, as expected. She tried to convince him, saying that if he helped just this once, she would ensure her support throughout his graduation. She also offered to recommend him to a guild sponsored by the family, so that their help could extend even after school, aiming to make him a successful hunter. Kim Joo-hyuk asked if making a statement would really end everything. It became evident that they were offering a substantial amount just to silence him. They were desperate. Adelia Ventrick's expression became very serious upon hearing this from the boy. Kim Joo-hyuk explained that he was angry because they were trying to cover everything up and his assistants wouldn't support such actions. He didn't mean a reward, he only wanted to see the disgrace that Rockdale Ventrick had brought upon them. The woman became furious and insulted him upon hearing this. She transformed, revealing her anger at being spoken to as if she were an ordinary person. Kim Joo-hyuk mocked her, saying she was showing her true self because she couldn't hold back anymore. She replied that she had come to make things easier for him, but in return, she only received arrogance. At that moment, she wished to kill him. She had wanted to be generous, but the boy was throwing it all away. Kim Joo-hyuk provoked her, telling her to try attacking him, making her even more furious and enraged. He commented on her public statement in which she claimed the family had nothing to do with the case, trying to uphold that lie with money while now wanting to kill him. Once again, he doubted her abilities, making her even angrier. He stated that she couldn't kill him anyway, adding fuel to the fire and further provoking her rage. Adelia Ventrick transformed back to her normal appearance and immediately invited Kim Joo-hyuk to talk, saying she would make him regret everything he had just said. He thought she couldn't do anything in the end and was just talking nonsense. Race then intervened, saying Kim Joo-hyuk didn't need to go that far. The two quickly began a mental conversation. Kim Joo-hyuk told Bark that he hated those arrogant fools the most, and he knew exactly what Adelia Ventrick was going to do, cursing her a lot. He also said he hated Barch, who didn't seem to care much. Kim Joo-hyuk then calmed down, thinking about how he didn't have any more classes for the day and could head to the training center early in the morning, thus ending these dramatic scenes of the chapter. Now we are in front of the Valhalla Stadium. Kim Joo-hyuk was walking there, scrolling through his phone, and suddenly he ran into someone, becoming quite surprised. It was the cute girl Choi Arin, right there. Standing in front of her was the eldest son of the Choijin family, Choi Jingnan. He was saying that she wasn't capable of defeating him, and that training a lot in Valhalla wouldn't help at all. He also said that if she really wanted to remain a member of the family, she shouldn't go to the selection test that weekend, because he didn't want to see her humiliated, but he was quickly contradicted by her negative response. This left him quite confused by her reaction, because according to him, he was giving her a chance, and she refused, seemingly unaware of what was happening. Choi Arin tried to respond, but someone suddenly interrupted, calling him a fool and saying he was the one misunderstanding the conversation. This made him very angry at being insulted. Kim Joo-hyuk had insulted him because he was trying to discourage someone who was putting in so much effort. The boy was confused about who the protagonist was, especially since they didn't know each other well enough to exchange insults. Kim Joo-hyuk responded to that arrogant fool, boasting about his authority, saying he didn't care about his rank. He also ordered him not to invade school grounds to demand anything from a student and told him to get lost. The protagonist then asked Choi Arin if she agreed with that. She immediately replied yes. This left Choi Jinggan very annoyed and angry. He said goodbye to the girl, saying they'd meet at the test, and then left the area. Choi Erin thanked Kim Joo-hyuk a lot, but he simply ordered her to head to training. She then revealed that when asked if she agreed, she was actually thinking of a different alternative. This made the protagonist very curious to know more. She explained that instead of telling him to leave, she would have insulted the boy, to which Kim Joo-hyuk reprimanded her, thinking she was crazy. They quickly started planning their training as they walked to the training center, thus ending the chapter. A few days later in the city of Shihyung, more specifically near a mountain, Kim Joo-hyuk was in the middle of a dense forest. He was searching for the right location using his cell phone. Brace asked if he was there to find his notes again, receiving a positive response. Even so, Brace questioned him since he had already found several relics, and Kim Joo-hyuk explained that he wanted to know how many written notes were still missing. He elaborated that he wanted to look for them because of the incredible things they might hold, leaving Brace quite confused. Kim Joo-hyuk said that if he could find them, he would overcome the great difficulties he had faced when he was Kim Hyuno, and that if he had met Brace more than 300 years ago, he might not have killed him, leaving Brace rather flustered. Now, we are at the grand house of the Trojan family, where a large concentration of reporters, paparazzi, and people had gathered. Some of them were discussing the individuals present for the group's selection test. Suddenly, a major authority figure of the family arrived at the scene. The leader of the Trojan group, Choi Jong-seok, announced that the selection test would begin shortly. He reinforced what he had said earlier, emphasizing that the winner would be recognized as the successor, and the loser would be immediately expelled from the Trojan family. Choi Jong-seok then asked if the candidates were ready to begin. They promptly responded with complete affirmation. He took a deep breath to initiate everything. Then he declared that the task of the test was to find the double blade hidden in the enormous mountains. Whoever managed to find and bring back the object would be definitively recognized as the winner of the selection test. It did not matter how they found it. He then gave the order for the battle to commence. Choi Erin's opponent celebrated, running ahead as it was not an urgent test. His plan was to let her find the blade and then steal it, ending everything. The boy clearly intended to snatch the double weapon from the girl. With this overly elaborate plan, we conclude the scenes of this chapter. Now we return to the past with Choi Jingin bidding farewell to Choi Erin. He walked away after Kim Joo-hyuk metaphorically kicked him out. Suddenly, at that moment, his cell phone rang loudly in his pocket. He quickly answered, immediately identifying himself. A man on the other end of the line promptly asked what had happened to the double blade. Choi Jingin explained that he would need to take the selection test, making the process more difficult and time-consuming. The man became slightly annoyed with the boy as it was the second time he had mentioned such a test. Choi Jingin, knowing he was late, immediately apologized. He asked if by some means he managed to obtain the double blade, would the man keep his promise. He was immediately reassured with a firm affirmation since such an agreement had been made in front of a constellation and was destined to be fulfilled. For this reason, the man instructed the boy to focus solely on the target, to which he received confirmation. Returning to the present, Choi Jingin thought this was his last chance. Therefore, he would have to find it one way or another. Choi Erin suddenly stopped running and used her mana. In that location, she sensed a trace of the double object's magic, concluding it was likely still there. She estimated it would probably take another 15 brief minutes. Suddenly, she pinpointed the correct direction of the double blade. But out of nowhere, her enemy, Choi Jingin, arrived at the same spot. He asked if she was tracking the double blade using magical traces and who had taught her to do such a thing. The girl replied that Kim Joo-hyuk had trained her for this. At this moment, we return to her past thoughts, where she had asked about magic control. She had been told affirmatively since she already knew some basic things. Kim Joo-hyuk informed her that she had already mastered the technique of altering magic into thunder, noting that this was just the basics, to which she nodded affirmatively. He instructed her to practice small, controlled magic exercises, not limiting herself to the grand ones, and was promptly questioned about the method to be used. Kim Joo-hyuk did not quite understand her question, as he assumed her family had already taught her this. She ended up feeling a little sad with a very downcast expression. But the protagonist said it didn't matter and asked if she only knew how to borrow power from the constellation and gather magical energy, receiving an affirmative response. He also admitted he wasn't particularly good at it either. He then ordered her to stop answering and relax her entire body, using the tips of her toes and fingers to slightly extend the magic. She was supposed to slowly spread it as if she were directing the mana to every strand of hair. In that state, Choi Erin had to try to sense the magic in the air according to Kim Joo-hyuk. She immediately focused on it without hesitating at all. Suddenly, her vision changed completely, revealing many unexpected things. She immediately widened her eyes in fear. Choi Erin took a deep breath as Kim Joo-hyuk asked if she had already felt it. The cute little girl answered affirmatively, explaining that she had seen the form of magic surrounding him. He replied that this was how magic felt even when it was weak and didn't leave the body, as it could be controlled with precise mana usage. Kim Joo-hyuk advised the girl to use more of it, as it would make it easier to sense the magic residues in the ground and air, to which she agreed. He explained that if the magic's appearance was like his, Choi Erin would be able to identify the magical traces from each object. And if she trained more, she would be able to see the silhouette clearly. But he couldn't teach her beyond that. She would have to train alone. Upon hearing everything her trainer said, the girl responded with full agreement. Now they returned to the present, where she was searching for the double-edged object. Choi Jin-gun asked her who Kim Joo-hyuk was, but soon remembered. He called him shameless and stupid, amazed by such talent. Choi Erin immediately gritted her teeth in rage after hearing that. She said that Kim Joo-hyuk was stronger than this brat and asked what he was doing there. Choi Jin-gun mocked her after hearing all that. He then began to unsheath his magical sword. He explained that his presence was for that reason, engaging in a sword battle with Choi Erin. Suddenly, he felt something very unusual. The little girl, who seemed so frail, was pushing him back effortlessly. He quickly withdrew his sword from the difficult battle. Then he took a deep breath, quite impressed with everything. He wondered when the little girl had become so strong, ending this dramatic chapter. In this chapter, we begin with Kim Joo-hyuk's search. He was using all his magic to find the lost object. He realized there was nothing there, lamenting because he had hidden so many and only one was in Valhalla. Suddenly, an incredibly bright light emerged from the ground. Kim Joo-hyuk celebrated because another note was there. He focused on going after it. It was already very close by. Out of nowhere, a kind of large explosion was seen, leaving him quite confused about what was happening in the area. Now we return to the battle between Choi Erin and Choi Jin-gun. The war was frenetic, with the two fighting tirelessly. Wielding their sharp swords, the little girl quickly prepared to deliver a powerful blow to her opponent. Without much hesitation, she struck with her sword with all her might at Choi Jin-gun. He flew far away and stopped, breathing heavily, visibly frightened. He mocked her, saying she was taking lessons on how to be a wild boar in Valhalla and was evidently physically stronger. Choi Erin told him to give up on the double-edged sword. He retorted, asking if she was crazy or out of her mind. He claimed that an illegitimate daughter like Choi Erin didn't deserve the double-edged object. Choi Erin focused as she watched the boy charge toward her. She gripped her sword firmly with all her strength. The boy quickly approached with an angry, furious expression, ready to attack her. She thought about quickly rotating her sword, executing that move. Then she slashed upward with a rapid rotation. While his sword was on the ground, she aimed to hit him squarely, executing all of it without hesitation with great success and mastery. Choi Jin-gun showed a lot of pain and agony on his face. He soon fell to the ground, sprawled and defeated, unable to react quickly. Choi Erin took a deep breath, greatly relieved by it all. She had thought she could land at least one hit on him, but never imagined it would be such a critical attack. She immediately focused on going after the double-edged sword. Suddenly, she heard a voice saying she hadn't won so easily, widening her eyes in fear. It was Choi Jin-gun standing up, fully recovered from the powerful and strong blow, filled with rage. He said he had mentioned something before. It was that the girl's blessing was a joke because she could never defeat him since he had a contract. Choi Jin-gun explained that Choi Erin had hit him while he was off guard, so he would give her credit for that. She asked about the magic surrounding the boy's sword as he seemed like a villain, wanting to make it very clear why that was the case. He then provoked her, saying she didn't need to know about it, and mocking her blatantly. Choi Erin immediately prepared a precise attack. The boy, without hesitation, charged at her quickly. The girl was surprised because he dodged her attack from an extremely short distance, and then landed a strong, precise blow on her body. She fell to the ground, groaning in pain with a defeated and tense expression. The boy quickly stood over her, asking if she really wouldn't get up, even recommending she stay down and not rise. She groaned in pain, noticing something strange on her small body. It was a large wound bleeding profusely. Choi Jin-gun mocked her, saying it would really be better to stay down and quiet to avoid death. She asked about the boy's contract and whether it was with some malicious and wicked constellation. The boy explained that as the leader of the Jinsa Guild, he had signed a contract with an A-level entity, but was now allied with the devotees, leaving the girl surprised. She had heard that name before. They were the third most dangerous evil group in the world. Choi Erin responded that she didn't understand the devotees' constellation contracts, asking if their membership benefits were better than enjoying life. The boy mocked her for questioning that, preparing to respond. He said they were incredible powers and commands along with the authorization to detach from the need to feel, leaving Choi Erin very confused and doubtful about what he had said. Choi Jin-gun explained that he had joined the Jinsa Guild at only 12 years old. He had been working for the family since childhood at an age when he only wanted to play, and he remained in the guild due to his father's oversight, not by choice. He also said that during his adolescence, filled with desires, he ended up meeting someone from the devotees. The man had encouraged him to join the group, saying he could fulfill all the desires of his heart. Choi Jin-gun felt that perhaps this man had already known his temperament, leaving the girl confused about that. He explained that his desire was to break fragile humans, but he couldn't just join them. He first had to fulfill the condition of obtaining the double sword relic. And if the girl had simply given up earlier, he would have received the double sword without significant trouble, and she wouldn't have had to start the second test. After hearing all this, Choi Erin felt somewhat confused about this test, as if she couldn't remember, leaving him astonished. He explained that 10 years ago, the eldest daughter of the Choijin family, Choi Ajin, had participated in the first selection test, leaving the girl perplexed by the revelation. She soon discovered that her older sister had disappeared while taking the evaluation. Choi Jingin said he hadn't been able to control his perplexing desires, revealing that before the search for the double sword, he had killed the girl in the mountains. But in the end, he failed to find the relic, ending up badly injured and failing miserably. Otherwise, he could have joined the devotees 10 years ago. In any case, the father had already found the daughter, secretly institutionalizing her, and Choi Jingin had left her there intending for her to disappear, but something had happened. Choi Arin became curious about where Choi Ajin was at that moment, only to be told that now was not the time to look for her, and that it was better to give up. The villain elaborated on the collapse of the little girl's mother, who always cried endlessly in despair. And the reason was that she saw her daughter's face in Choi Arin. Choi Jingin then concluded his revelations, returning to the main focus, the double sword. He then prepared to strike the girl, telling her to send a greeting to her deceased sister, and then unleashed a blow with all his strength toward Choi Arin's head. But suddenly, a loud noise echoed in the same place. Choi Jingin was completely shocked and very surprised by this. Kim Joo-hyuk was right there and had just defended Choi Arin from what would have been a completely fatal blow, concluding this tense and exciting chapter. Kim Joo-hyuk, acting heroically, asked what Choi Jingin was doing. He replied that it was a family matter and told him to mind his own problems. The protagonist said that group was completely insane, as he ended a strong blow on the guide, pointing a knife at his own little sister. The same boy flew far from there with an expression of intense pain. Choi Arin then tried to communicate with her heroic friend, calling out his name and demanding attention for a moment. She quickly asked what he was doing there. Kim Joo-hyuk thought he had only gone to that place to unearth his vault, as it was in that direction. Meanwhile, Choi Arin was trying to stop the blood flowing from her stomach with her hands. The protagonist widened his eyes upon noticing such a grave and deep wound. He finally answered her question, saying he had some matters to handle there, ordering her to step back and gather some magic to heal the wound. She immediately responded affirmatively. Meanwhile, Choi Jingin stood up, wondering who that guy who suddenly appeared was, and if he was perhaps the rude student from Valhalla. He reiterated that those matters were family business only. At the same time, he cursed and charged the protagonist of the story with his huge and sharp sword. He poured all his magic and strength into it, making it glow with purple mana. But something unexpected happened just as the strike was about to land. It left Choi Jingin stunned and deeply impressed. Kim Joo-hyuk had easily dodged the stab without any effort. He then began explaining how to stab someone properly. Choi Jingin, he said, shouldn't aim at a stationary target, but should target someone who was moving like himself, while demonstrating this by striking him. The boy screamed in pain and agony, his mouth expelling a vital red liquid after the powerful and potent blow. But Kim Joo-hyuk didn't stop his onslaught at that moment. Choi Jingin thought his enemy was pursuing him while simultaneously pushing him back. Suddenly, he took another powerful and potent strike to the middle of his weak and useless body. He was driven into the ground, causing significant destruction. His expression was no longer that of a living person, but of someone utterly defeated. Kim Joo-hyuk watched him on the ground without saying a single word. He then asked if Arin was okay, receiving an immediate affirmative response. He also asked if she could walk while she attempted to move. Suddenly, a purple magic aura caught the protagonist's attention. Choi Jingin's body was exuding abundant magical smoke at that moment. Brace commented to Kim Joo-hyuk that it was a magical sword, receiving an affirmative reply along with a question about whether that guy was evil too. Suddenly, the villain firmly planted his feet on the ground. He quickly stood up, cursing furiously at the protagonist of the story. He also said that the protagonist was just a useless freshman from Valhalla. He accused him of underestimating the offensive leader of the guild while preparing a strike with his sword. But that stab was easily blocked by Kim Joo-hyuk. Choi Jingin then thought that even magic couldn't make the protagonist move. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately called the guild's offensive leader. He asked if he had chosen a different position because it fit better, striking him as he spoke. The leader was sent flying far away, his expression completely battered and destroyed, unable to answer the question. He wondered about the power of that guy since he blocked attacks and even counterattacked, not seeming to be just 17 years old. Choi Jingin saw no alternative but to use a trump card. It would have many side effects, but if he kept getting beaten, he would quickly lose. So he thought about using it with the artificial remnants. He could manage a temporary contract with a constellation. Kim Joo-hyuk stared at him while he strategized his victory plan. Choi Jingin then began laughing very maliciously and wickedly. He soon revealed all the magic emanating from his body. Suddenly, everyone at the selection test site was in despair as an earthquake began at that moment. A reporter called his friend, saying he was seeing something very unusual there. Purple smoke was rising high from the middle of the forest. The family leader wondered what it could be. He concluded it was a magical sword dense enough for everyone to see. Moreover, it was right where the double-edged swords were. Traditionally, he wouldn't intervene in the selection test, but since it was very dangerous, he decided to take action. Meanwhile, at the site, Kim Joo-hyuk and Choi Jingin were intensely staring at each other. The protagonist said he was just observing everything, yet the villain increased his magic. Choi Jingin responded by cursing and saying it was just an extra effect. He explained that all those things were only part of the power he gained through the temporary contract while threatening Kim Joo-hyuk. Suddenly, the information surfaced that the dragon that kills everyone had already recognized this sacred relic, showing its teeth as if very satisfied. And it had already activated its ability, the eye that penetrates nature. Kim Joo-hyuk observed all that with a very calm and serene expression. Out of nowhere, the dragon that kills everyone widened its eye. It timidly glanced at the protagonist of the story staring at him. Suddenly, the dragon that kills everyone deactivated its eye that penetrates nature, then reactivated it immediately, looking quite jumpy. It was evident that it was overcome by fear. It exclaimed that it had to leave immediately, leaving Choi Jingen utterly confused. The dragon that kills everyone declared that it rejected the call of this sacred relic, ending the contract. It reclaimed all its power and quickly fled, abandoning Choi Jingen. Kim Joo-hyuk and Choi Ah-ren watched as all its magic dissipated. The protagonist then initiated a conversation between the two of them. Immediately, he placed the tip of his sword against Choi Jingen's stomach, asking who would kill whom at that exact moment. After that, he delivered a powerful strike with the sword, sending Choi Jingen flying far away, screaming in immense pain and agony because of his abdomen. The boy immediately collapsed to the ground, unconscious and defeated, concluding this chapter. The leader of the devotees, the Dragon King Han Nibble, was astonished by what he saw before him. That dragon that kills everyone was claiming it had gotten into big trouble because of him. Yelling loudly, it asked if he wanted to disappear from this mortal plane. Han Nibble immediately tried to apologize to the constellation and was promptly slammed headfirst into the ground on his knees. The dragon that kills everyone warned him not to distribute any more artificial relics in the future. Han Nibble responded with immediate affirmation. The constellation also warned him to behave properly. Soon the great leader of the devotees began to rise from the ground. With an expression of great pain and confusion, he wondered what that had been and why the constellation had become so angry and furious. And regarding the artificial relic, he could tell that the brat planted in the Choijin family had done something wrong. However, the problematic words of the constellation suggested that it was afraid of something. The leader of the devotees urgently needed to find out what was happening. Now he returned to the dormitory at Valhalla School, more specifically to Kim Joo-hyuk's room. He felt relieved after everything that had happened. He quickly reached into his backpack to grab something, celebrating finally having obtained it. It was the impressive and rare divine arts. Ray seemed a bit confused about it, and Kim Joo-hyuk explained that it was the main reason he had been searching for the notes. He also mentioned that it was an extremely efficient breathing technique to increase magical power. Race immediately asked about the protagonist's old strategy, which Kim Joo-hyuk dismissed as something he used only when he was an insignificant being. Additionally, he explained that when he had found those divine arts 300 years ago, he couldn't change because they had already been ingrained in his body. When Kim Joo-hyuk fought Barchi, he ended up being defeated because of the horrible breathing technique, which drained his magical power. But now he could start anew with that new body. He decided to stop training his physical body for a while since he needed to learn the divine arts first. Brace then asked about the situation that had happened earlier, noting that Kim Joo-hyuk had left Choi Ah-ren alone with the unconscious villain. The protagonist explained that someone was approaching, so he left in a hurry, but everything would work out somehow. Now we rewind the story, returning to the battle. Choi Jingen was lying face down on the ground, unconscious. Kim Joo-hyuk watched him with a tense and concerned expression. Brace quickly asked if he had killed the villain, to which Kim Joo-hyuk replied that he couldn't kill him because he had already been involved in another incident in Valhalla, compromising everything. However, since there were faint traces of magic, the boy would probably survive, which Brace confirmed positively. Kim Joo-hyuk then asked if Choi Ah-ren could stand up, discovering that she could, according to her. And just as he was about to say something else, he noticed someone approaching at that moment, likely the girl's family on their way, which could interfere with finding the notes. The protagonist then called the girl, and she promptly responded. He ordered her not to strain herself since her family was already arriving and informed her that he had to leave due to obligations, which she acknowledged. Kim Joo-hyuk told Choi Ah-ren to claim she had dealt with the villain alone in case her group didn't know. He revealed that the boy had lost a lot of energy in the last attack while bidding farewell to the girl. She said she understood everything, bidding him farewell and planning to see him again at school. Now we return to the present, concluding the protagonist's memories as he continued to plan something regardless. He wanted to retrieve the inventory stones as soon as he mastered the divine arts, since last time he couldn't absorb all their magical power. But up until that moment, he just wanted to rest for a while. Now we return to the Choijin family province. The family leader was gathered with several people at a table at that moment. He said that thanks to the press present at the selection test site, news articles had been published very quickly. He found out that most people had already read them. One of those articles stated that the Choijin family was a joke. Another claimed that the group had ties to the devotees. The family leader was very concerned about the chaos, stating that he couldn't believe there was a malicious infiltrator in the Choijin group. Furthermore, he revealed that an official letter had been released by the association with a declaration from them. He said that something similar had happened to the Ventric family, and since their ties were distant, they had remained silent, but this approach would no longer work. The leader asked about Choi Erin and also informed them of Choi Jingden's arrest, learning that the little girl was safe and being treated in the family hospital. He also discovered that the injury had been significant, but the bleeding had stopped and the organs had not been damaged, eliminating the need for surgery. Upon learning this, the leader expressed his great relief. Someone at the table informed him that there were some articles about Miss Erin. The news praised her, saying she had defeated a member of the devotees despite being just a student, following in Kim Joo-hyuk's footsteps. The family leader was a bit confused since the little girl had gone against her own group, yet the reports were celebrating this. Then, a man sitting at the table said that all of this was a relief because the selection test had ended in chaos, but the next family head had been confirmed. He also explained that those kinds of articles would certainly help Choi Erin establish her position as the successor, with the leader agreeing. The leader thought it was good for the little girl to have a legitimate chance to prosper, but defeating Jingden on her own raised many strange suspicions. At this point, we can go back in time to the leader's memory. It was when he and his assistant saw Choi Erin sitting in front of Choi Jingden. She explained that her brother had chased her with dark magic, which was why she had knocked him out. The leader questioned how Choi Erin had done that, as much magical power had been seen emanating from the mountains. Meanwhile, the girl was lifted by the assistants. She quickly responded that Kim Joo-hyuk had taught her that. Now returned to the present with the family leader. He was reading articles about the protagonist and thinking about him, concluding this tense and enigmatic chapter. We begin this chapter at the mega school of Valhalla. Kim Joo-hyuk had just arrived in his classroom at that moment. Suddenly, he saw something that caught his attention. It was Choi Erin sitting quietly and calmly in her chair. He thought she would still be in the hospital, but she seemed completely fine. She then turned her head toward him. She waved at him shyly with a small, happy smile on her face. A boy wondered if that smile was meant for him, but Kim Joo-hyuk brought him back to reality with two quick illusions. Now we go back a little in time to the protagonist reading his notes. Suddenly, he heard a familiar noise, becoming very alert. It was Choi Erin, informing him that she wouldn't be able to train for a while, which was expected given how much blood she had lost. Kim Joo-hyuk quickly responded, saying it was no problem since he would be solving some issues in the coming days. She then sent several stickers, making him quite nervous with so many messages in a row. Suddenly, Grace appeared, saying he had something to reveal, piquing his curiosity. He informed him that the dark magic was very familiar. Kim Joo-hyuk questioned him about his memory, but Brace couldn't recall anything. He explained that he hadn't forgotten but seemed to have something blocking his memory. Kim Joo-hyuk hypothesized that the cause was that pesky guy Brace had mentioned before, and Brace agreed. Brace said he wasn't 100% sure, but satisfying the second condition might theoretically overcome that block. The protagonist then associated this with the center of the Great Forest. He thought it was just an area used for performance evaluations, but it also served for the final practical exam, where the worst performers were immediately expelled. Kim Joo-hyuk then reached the unfortunate conclusion that he would have to wait until the exam period, losing a lot of time. Now we return to the present, where the protagonist emphasized that he needed time to adapt to Shingon anyway, quickly deciding to search for the center of the forest. Suddenly, the teacher entered the classroom, ordering the students to organize themselves. He informs the class that an announcement would be made before the lesson begins. He asks about the inter-school competition happening next month and learns that the students were already aware. Kim Joo-hyuk ponders over the battle, and Brace adds that the teacher mentioned it after the bi-monthly exam. The gray-haired man explains that the school intends to select students with the highest scores in the final exams to participate. Right after saying this, he calls the protagonist to his office, leaving him confused. Now we leave the classroom and head to another location in Valhalla. The teacher remarks on how often they meet there, and Kim Joo-hyuk responds that it's the teacher's fault. He agrees it's his fault, but says this time the matter concerns Kim Joo-hyuk's participation in the inter-school competition. Before the teacher gets to the important part, Kim Joo-hyuk declines the invitation. However, he still asked about the competition, and the teacher promises to explain it in detail once again. It involves the three largest hunter training institutions in the world, including Valhalla in Korea, White Lotus in China, and the Impressive Heroes in the United States of America. Each selects several first-year students to represent them in a competition involving combat, maze escapes, and various other challenges. For this reason, Valhalla plans to send those who scored the highest in the practical exam. Kim Joo-hyuk then shows clear disinterest in the matter. The teacher tries to explain the benefits, but Kim Joo-hyuk says he's not interested in money or similar rewards. He reaffirms this, though the teacher doesn't seem too concerned. The teacher then brings up the Great Forest's center in the conversation, catching the boy's interest as it is the location of the final exam. The teacher explains that since the final task is at Valhalla, it will involve entering the Great Forest's center, essentially bypassing the winners of the last exam. However, if someone fails to complete it, they will have to attempt again during the final exams. After hearing this, Kim Joo-hyuk confirms his understanding. He then announces his desire to participate in the inter-school competition. Now we shift to the vast Ventrix estate located in the United Kingdom. There, the family head, Adelia, asks about the progress of the preparations. She is told everything is going well, but it will take another month to complete, to which she responds that everyone should simply continue their efforts. She also inquires about Valhalla and the people of Rockdale Ventric, discovering that no issues have been reported regarding their movements. She immediately orders her employee to voice any suspicions, and he responds affirmatively. He then mentions news unrelated to them but quite disturbing, piquing her curiosity. The rumors suggested that certain people were building a structure made entirely of paper notes in the market. Adelia is shocked to learn this and discovers that Black Cat is likely responsible for the deed. She wonders what they are planning, as such a thing is highly unusual. Adelia quickly opens her tech panel, discovering that the Beat Mask was demanding a more detailed report. She immediately calls for Miss Constellation, concluding these scenes of the chapter. Now we are in the 7th territory of the market. There the movement of machinery is observed, and Black Cat watches everything from a vantage point. He states that he would do anything ordered by the Constellation, but the purpose of building a structure entirely of fragile paper notes was unknown. Then someone appears, revealing that it was a gift to be given, tensely ending the chapter. Black Cat immediately asks why he was ordered to build a structure entirely out of money. The two-faced ruler replies that it was a gift, making the little black feline very curious about who the grand gesture was for. He starts to think of someone but keeps it a mystery for now. The two-faced ruler then asks if he has found the boy who sold the rings. Black Cat replies negatively, explaining that the seller didn't leave clear characteristics of the boy. However, since the Dade's contact information was recorded, the search is being conducted using all available records. The Constellation, upon hearing this, urges haste, making the feline respond affirmatively, visibly tense and desperate. Now we leave that scene and move to the staff room in Valhalla. The gray-haired teacher is seen struggling to sort things out. Suddenly, Lee Sang-hyul enters, asking if he has chosen all the members for the competition, to which he responds affirmatively. Lee then requests the list of selected students. He discovers that apart from Jungjin, all the participants are from the gray-haired teacher's class. He is surprised to see Kim Joo-hyuk among the participants. The teacher explains that the boy initially didn't want to join, but when he mentioned the Great Forest's center, his opinion changed suddenly. Lee Sang-hyul finds this very strange, noting that most people hesitate upon hearing about it, and the teacher fully agrees. But it was unlikely that he didn't know what the center of the Great Forest was, even if he slept through all the lessons, as everything was explained clearly. Lee Sang-hyul then thought about the Room of Constellations, highlighting Kim Joo-hyuk's ulterior motives for being at the school. He soon asked if it was okay to gather all the students for training, receiving a positive response, and the professor arranged a schedule. After that, the two parted ways in a tone of friendship and camaraderie. Thus ended the conversation of this scene in the chapter. Now we fast forward a few days to the small auditorium at Valhalla. There was the muscular of Siyuk, the powerful, fearless, and impressive Yu Soyeon, alongside the cute and strong little girl Choi Aron, plus Do Jungjin, who wasn't part of the gray-haired professor's class, and our beloved protagonist Kim Joo-hyuk. Suddenly, Lee Sang-hyul entered the auditorium where all these prodigious students were gathered. He immediately noticed the 5 selected students were present. He said it was a pleasure to meet them and introduced himself as their combat instructor. Lee Sang-hyul explained why the students were there and that he would later describe the training they would undergo. There would be a total of 3 trials to complete. The first was a duel between students, very similar to the entrance test at Valhalla. The second trial involved a team battle with the 5 school members competing against students from other schools. This test emphasized the leaders' situational adaptation skills, as all teams would be fighting simultaneously, according to Lee Sang-hyul. The third trial involved the center of the Great Forest, which greatly intrigued Kim Joo-hyuk. Due to the final exam being brought forward, Lee Sang-hyul couldn't provide much information, only stating that the center of the Great Forest was a fearsome labyrinth. As the name suggested, the place had many trees and an extremely secure gate designed to block anyone, allowing entry only to authorized personnel. All Lee Sang-hyul could say was that each group would enter the center of the Great Forest, with instructions given on the day itself. Even with limited information, everyone understood. He decided to proceed, explaining the team battle specifications and format, as there wasn't much else to elaborate on. He expected everyone to have some knowledge given their experience with the dungeon raid, while Kim Joo-hyuk pondered the vague explanation about the Great Forest. Since there was a barrier, he couldn't just enter. It wasn't that simple. Thus concluded the initial explanation and the protagonist's line of reasoning. After explaining the team battle, Lee Sang-hyul also outlined the training process. Before proceeding, he asked if the group had any questions, and the only one to raise his hand was Kim Joo-hyuk. Once authorized to speak, he asked if there was any issue with training alone. Lee Sang-hyul replied that it didn't matter, as the boy could train however he wished. After answering, he again asked if anyone else had questions, and this time only the cute little girl raised her hand, also expressing her desire to train alone. Lee Sang-hyul found it very strange that both Kim Joo-hyuk and Choi Aron wanted to train alone, but he agreed anyway, and asked if anyone else had the same intention. As the others remained silent, Lee Sang-hyul assumed they didn't. He then decided to wrap things up for the day, informing them he would see them again during training, receiving an affirmative response. The students began to stand and leave the venue. Kim Joo-hyuk thought that before the competition began, he would have mastered the technique, fully absorbing the mana and improving his condition. All of his free time would be dedicated to training, and while thinking this, someone called out to him. It was Choi Erin, asking if participating in the training was a good idea. He was slightly confused by this question since, in his mind, she planned to train alone. She had also mentioned she couldn't push herself too hard, reinforcing that idea. But then she considered that there was a catch to all this. Suddenly, we delve into her memories from some time ago, where the professor mentioned reading the newspaper articles and wanting to understand her decision better in person. He asked if she really wanted to participate in the event. She asked if Kim Joo-hyuk would be attending, to which the professor confirmed. Thus, Choi Erin decided to participate as well, leaving the professor quite impressed, given that her body hadn't fully recovered yet. She assured him she would be fine, gaining the trust of the gray-haired professor. Now back to the present, Choi Erin thought that little time remained before she could become the head of the family, but there was still a catch. Thanks to Kim Joo-hyuk, she had found another goal to pursue. This goal was to grow stronger as a team, helping him achieve his individual goals. Just as he had previously helped her willingly and generously, he was somewhat confused by her odd way of speaking, stopping, and smiling, but nonetheless advised her not to overtrain, and she responded affirmatively. Kim Joo-hyuk then explained that most of the training would focus on mana control and that their physical preparation would center on walks, which she confirmed positively. After giving all the instructions and tips, he bid farewell to Choi Erin, informing her he would finish his work and then help her a bit more. Now we find ourselves in what appears to be a prison, with the moon shining in the dark sky. A man with broken teeth was screaming in agony, begging for mercy in that place. He just wanted to leave, offering bribes to the men there. One of them held an extremely sharp and large knife in his hands with a dark and frightening expression. He suddenly struck the young show-off in the chest, making him groan and bleed heavily. The man collapsed to his knees, his hands behind his back, unconscious and defeated. Lisa asked why Al hadn't finished the situation already, and he replied that it wouldn't be fun to end it so quickly. The girl became enthusiastic as another mission had arisen to be successfully completed. The boy asked if it was a new target to kill, and she responded affirmatively. On the girl's phone was a picture of Kim Joo-hyuk, the young man from Valhalla, ending the chapter with a shocking mission against the protagonist. The vigilante's victim was still there, bleeding with a knife in his chest. One of them began a conversation as he removed the weapon from the boy's body. Nandul asked why they had taken on the job of killing a useless student. Lisa replied that the client had probably paid a fortune for it. The deadline was a month since the boy needed to be killed during the inter-school competition. Nandul asked Lisa why they didn't just finish the mission now, and she explained that the dormitory security was strong, making it almost impossible to breach the barrier. He countered that theoretically, it would be even more complicated during the school competition, considering the other schools present, something Lisa had already heard from Alia. They said the third day's task would be in the Great Forest's center, involving a mysterious maze. Lisa also learned that the goal was for students to traverse the area, and Nandul grew curious about whether instructors would be present. She explained that no one would be there except for a drone and a few guards at the entrance, as the teachers and counselors would be watching from afar. They would have to hide after Alia infiltrated first, which Nandul found boring. Lisa emphasized that completing the mission was the priority, and Nandul agreed. Now we fast forward a month to the first day of the inter-school competition. All the students were excited about the event's start. Rockdale Ventrick observed everything in complete silence. We then delve into his mind, going back some time. On that day, he answered a call from his dear father. He informed him that he had received the money for Eden Ventrick, which his father acknowledged positively. He also mentioned that with the money, he had paid for a divine contract, ordering Il Shinjo to kill Kim Joo-hyuk. His father was shocked to hear this, but Rockdale Ventrick explained there was nothing linking the two to these malicious actions. Regardless, he would ensure that was the case, as the Samsel Du Il Shin group had already accepted the commission. Eden Ventrick had heard of this senior assassin group, made up of 3 individuals working together to become an unstoppable force. Because of this, his father urged his son not to draw too much attention, to which Rockdale agreed. Now back to the present, Rockdale Ventrick reflected that Il Shin had already sent confirmation that Kim Joo-hyuk would be handled during the competition. Thus, he didn't need to sit and watch. He immediately called his assistant Julia to leave the area. Suddenly, a man dressed in black appeared on the podium, welcoming the students and spectators. It was Shim Deok-woon, the president of Valhalla's council. Before the competition officially began, he wanted to introduce the representatives from each school. He started with White Lotus from China, followed by the heroes from the United States, and finally, the remarkable students from Valhalla, representing South Korea. Shim Deok-woon announced that the competition would last 3 days and that the first day's task would be individual duels among the students. He requested the representatives from each school to return to their waiting rooms to await the battle list. Everyone began heading to where they had been instructed. Lee Sang-cheol observed them attentively in silence. Suddenly, someone with a very familiar voice called out to him. It was the senior hero instructor, Jack Rover, greeting him after a long time apart. Lee Sang-cheol joked, agreeing and calling him third place, making Jack quite angry with the nickname. After all, Valhalla hadn't managed to take first place, and the senior instructor knew it. Jack Rover then said this year would be different. The heroes would undoubtedly secure the top spot on the leaderboard, but Lee Sang-cheol questioned that statement. However, the killing of others was strictly prohibited, as stated by Choi Jong-seok. He brought up the pinnacle of all contractors, someone the senior director of Valhalla already knew about. That individual was called the Destroyer, his real name being Logan. Jack Rover quickly revealed that the son of this impressive contractor was part of the heroes, leaving the senior director stunned. The boy had gone as their representative and was right there. He was Logan's son, named Logan Jr. Lee Sang-cheol expressed his anticipation to see the boy's potential, only to be told that Logan Jr. had already made a contract with his father's constellation. He was impressed by this information about the pact with the destroyer of everything. The boy likely wielded the same destructive power, though Jack Rover slightly downplayed this, explaining that the father was better at utilizing it. Jack also noted that Valhalla wasn't asking questions just about Kim Joo-hyuk. He had heard that Kim Joo-hyuk had defeated and captured a villain, a fact confirmed and elaborated upon by Lee Sang-cheol. Jack Rover then said that Kim Joo-hyuk and Choi Arin would make a good match for Logan Jr., as they were already capable of defeating experienced adults. Lee Sang-cheol gave a lukewarm response. Suddenly, the announcer declared that the participants for the first round had been revealed. The senior instructor responded that his friend would soon understand his half-hearted reaction, specifically after watching the fight. At this moment, Kim Joo-hyuk was already standing in front of his opponent. Shim Deo-kun explained that the rules were simple and essentially the same for all matches. The first to win would be declared the victor. Even if a vital point was hit with a weapon, the stadium's system would automatically reduce the damage, sending electric pulses to mimic the pain for the target. This protection system would remain in effect until the next round. After the countdown, the matches could begin. As Kim Joo-hyuk listened to the announcer, he wondered why they used something like that, and Brace said it was to ensure he remained fit to fight at least through the first and second days. The countdown was already in its final seconds. It ticked down to the last moment. Suddenly, the starting signal was given and Kim Joo-hyuk charged quickly at his target. But then he felt something unexpected. His attack had been blocked by his opponent. The opponent mocked Kim Joo-hyuk's apparent weakness, ending this chapter with the beginning of what promised to be an epic battle. Kim Joo-hyuk replied that he didn't think he was strong, but rather that he aimed for a long road ahead. The boy retorted, saying his enemy was more modest than he expected. But for Kim Joo-hyuk, it didn't matter whether he was kind or talkative. He was still growing. While fighting, he asked his opponent how much longer he could withstand his powerful blows. Meanwhile, the boy stood completely still, fearful of what was coming. Kim Joo-hyuk quickly prepared to strike him without mercy. He delivered a super strong and powerful blow to the boy's frail body. The boy fell to his knees, gasping for air, commenting on the weight of that punch. Kim Joo-hyuk said the boy was quite tough since he had hoped to knock him out with just one punch but failed. The senior instructors were watching everything attentively from above. Lee Sang-cheol commented that the boy was indeed strong. Jack Rover responded that he had seen Kim Joo-hyuk's performance alongside his students before, but there was a catch. Back then, he hadn't seemed as intimidating. Still, Jack Rover held on to hope because the battle wasn't over yet, and Logan Jr. hadn't used his destructive power. Logan Jr. was already preparing his magical attack. Kim Joo-hyuk observed him calmly, without hesitation. Meanwhile, the attack drew closer and closer to his head, even ripping out a few strands of hair. Kim Joo-hyuk remained highly alert as he realized the potency of the magic. He immediately counterattacked his opponent, who had become overconfident. Afterward, Kim Joo-hyuk noticed the missing tufts of hair on his head, recognizing that this was likely some form of destructive ability. Meanwhile, Logan Jr. felt as though he was about to faint even after only 2 hits to his stomach. He thinks that if he couldn't perfect the destruction skill, there would be no reason to use it. But he quickly reconsiders this decision, because he still had another option to follow. Suddenly, he places his hands on the ground, absorbing a significant amount of magic. The ground couldn't withstand the pressure and quickly began to crack apart. Kim Joo-hyuk wonders what that could be and why the boy is destroying the concrete in the area. Then he begins to put his plan into action. After stomping hard on the ground, all the concrete starts to levitate. Logan Jr. thinks that since Kim Joo-hyuk can dodge attacks by seeing them, he would need to strike from a place out of sight to win. But the protagonist had blood in his eyes and was intensely focused on the battle. Suddenly, Logan Jr. realizes that Kim Joo-hyuk had found him. But at that moment, it was already too late to retreat, so he decided to continue his attack. His decision was utterly foolish because out of nowhere, he took a hit from a piece of concrete to his forehead. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately reveals that he had seen him hiding behind the tiles, but also adds that it wouldn't have been easier to find him if he had been attacking with magic. Then the protagonist lands a powerful punch to his opponent's face after saying all that, sending him flying far away until he stopped with a harsh impact. The announcer quickly declares the end of the round, aiming Kim Joo-hyuk from Valhalla Academy as the winner. Lee Sang-cheol comments that this explains his calm demeanor, while Jack Rover is left speechless. He also states that the boy is a true prodigy monster. In the next round, Kim Joo-hyuk faces Lee Wei-anpong from White Lotus, winning effortlessly. After that, his opponent Lee Bella from the Heroes also loses easily. Finally, we arrive at the individual duel against the sweet Choi Erin. She remarks that they had reached the final round, suggesting that Valhalla's victory was nearly guaranteed, and that there was no real reason for the battle except to establish the ranking. She asks if she should forfeit since the winner would receive the scholarship, and she didn't care much about the prize. Kim Joo-hyuk shares the same sentiment but orders her not to give up because it would be presumptuous not to demonstrate combat skills. He also says that Choi Erin should show him how much she had improved. Then Kim Joo-hyuk commands her to attack, saying he would consider her injury. The girl immediately responds affirmatively, preparing to strike. She grips her sword tightly and charges at her friend and trainer. He too was eager for the battle. After the fight, the announcer appeared stunned and tense. Jack Rover and Lee Sang-hyul were also shocked by what they witnessed. The students from Valhalla watched in awe. Kim Joo-hyuk had just delivered a powerful blow at Choi Erin, who lay on the ground. The announcer quickly declares Kim Joo-hyuk the winner of the individual duels in that year's inter-school competition. Brace criticizes the protagonist's cruel actions, reminding him he promised to go easy. He responds that he had held back by not hitting the girl's abdomen. Kim Joo-hyuk says forcing her to fall face first to the ground was an improvisation, leaving his mental adversary confused. He then explains that the girl's sword trajectory had tilted toward his stomach, so he had forced it downward, making it clear. Kim Joo-hyuk realizes he had grown significantly stronger, marveling at the evolution of his mana and noting he could now reserve some of it. He also noticed something else. Choi Erin had improved significantly. This concludes this part of the intense chapter. Now it was nighttime with the moon shining in the dark sky. Lee Sang-hyul congratulated Valhalla's team at that moment, also asking if everyone was okay, to which they responded affirmatively. He explained that thanks to the protection system, they were unharmed, though a few scratches could be seen, recommending they check themselves thoroughly. He also announced that he would provide additional information about the next day's formation. Kim Joo-hyuk thought that waiting longer to go to the Great Forest's center was a huge waste of time. Lee Sang-hyul then informed them that the team meeting was over and ordered them to rest, to which they agreed. He immediately left the area. Suddenly, someone called out to him from behind. It was the prodigious and powerful Kim Joo-hyuk. Kim Joo-hyuk and Lee Sang-hyul stared at each other in silence for a brief moment. The instructor quickly asked if the boy was curious about something, and he responded affirmatively. It was about the group battle the next day. Kim Joo-hyuk wanted to know if, upon completing the test, he could head straight to the final trial in the Great Forest's center. Lee Sang-hyul said that this had never happened before, so he would have to check the rulebook. He quickly informed Kim Joo-hyuk that there were 2 clauses, piquing the protagonist's curiosity. The inter-school competition committee assigned only 1 basic trial per day to students, but there were exceptions. Lee Sang-hyul then began to recite 2 rules to the boy. The first was about finishing the task before the allotted time, and the second involved appropriate battle conditions. Kim Joo-hyuk asked about his professor's criteria. He questioned whether, if he completed everything correctly, he could move on to the next trial. Lee Sang-hyul responded that if the boy finished early and went to the teacher's room, it would be fine to start the next challenge in the afternoon. Kim Joo-hyuk acknowledged this, saying he would see him the next day. The two bid farewell on that beautiful dark night. Brace asked the protagonist about his plans, and he affirmed that it was a relief to know about the trial in advance. The strange-looking man said he understood, commenting on the trial. He assumed Kim Joo-hyuk was planning to eliminate students from the other academies, but Kim Joo-hyuk called him an idiot, explaining he was referring to the first trial, not the second. Brace acknowledged his misunderstanding, and the protagonist thought about one more thing. It was that he had no time to waste concluding the scenes of this chapter. Now we move to the next day in Valhalla's surrounding area called Yasen. The announcer expressed his pleasure in seeing everyone again, ready to reveal the second trial of the inter-school competition. That day's event would be a group battle with the 5 representatives from each academy facing off in the mountains. A difficult task due to the terrain. A megadrome with a massive camera would broadcast the trial. All the Valhalla students were already preparing for the start. The girl with the tiara wondered when Kim Joo-hyuk would arrive, as the trial was about to begin. Suddenly, he arrived, apologizing for being late. The girl was very upset because of the time, but the protagonist argued that he hadn't heard his alarm. She retorted, saying he should have been there 30 minutes earlier as the professor had instructed, but admitted she had been thinking of something else at the time. Kim Joo-hyuk was growing frustrated with the girl scolding him, even after he had apologized. He then announced that he would handle everything, leaving her stunned. She doubted Kim Joo-hyuk even knew what he was talking about, given that it was a group battle, but he insisted he understood. The girl continued to scold him, pointing out that despite his victory in the individual duel, other teams would gang up on them, making it foolish to go alone. She then asked the group if they had any complaints. Choi Erin suddenly arrived, asking to speak, and the girl already suspected what the cute little girl might say. But instead of complaining, Choi Erin simply asked to accompany Kim Joo-hyuk. receiving a negative response that left the tiara girl furious. The protagonist then asked the girl with the tiara to stop chattering, leaving her confused. He explained that he had another game to participate in during the afternoon, while the countdown for the trial's start began. The girl grew angrier and more confused about what he was saying. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't respond, claiming she talked too much and besides, only 3 seconds remained before the trial began. He simply wanted to prepare for the center of the Great Forest. Then the trial finally started with the White Lotus team fully prepared for battle. Suddenly, they were startled by the arrival of the protagonist who had found them. The group leader panicked as it was the boy from Valhalla standing before them, demanding their readiness. Kim Joo-hyuk mocked them, saying he was impressed with their reaction time. The White Lotus team was soon eliminated, leaving Logan Jr. stunned and confused. The team was already out of the game just 10 minutes into the battle. Logan Jr. thought that the cursed Valhalla students must have gone straight for the White Lotus team, acting quickly to avoid being attacked first. Suddenly, a teammate called out to him, reporting the detection of magic in a specific direction. Logan Jr. quickly asked if it was the Valhalla group. He was told it wasn't a group but a single person. Logan Jr. then ordered Luke and Dane to maintain the magical shield, and they promptly complied. Melissa's role was to prepare enhancement magic, and she also responded affirmatively. Debella was ordered to reinforce their shield, though she was already doing so. The group appeared very powerful after all their preparations. Melissa questioned the necessity of all this, considering it was only a solitary threat. Logan Jr. replies that he would definitely need it, considering the threat posed by the powerful Kim Joo-hyuk. Debella remarks that Melissa had never fought against the boy before and was unaware of his extraordinary skills for a high schooler. The blonde girl argues that her friend hadn't fought him either, and Logan Jr. points out that there's no comparison to someone like him. The boy in white clothes suddenly informs them that the magic had disappeared without warning. 2 members of the group comment that it could mean they had left or perhaps just taken a look before retreating. Nevertheless, they remained well prepared for a potential surprise attack. They were alert, using all possible powers and protections at that moment. Suddenly, a shadow is spotted circling the area. Logan Jr. realizes who it is. He thinks that Kim Joo-hyuk is right above the group. In an instant, he takes his sword strike directly to the top of his head. There was the powerful boy from Valhalla delivering a potent and strong blow. Logan Jr. collapses, completely defeated and unconscious on the ground. The little girl is desperate over what had just happened in front of her, but it's too late to react as Kim Joo-hyuk is already attacking her with great force as well. The blonde girl tries to call out to him, preparing to take him by surprise. He wonders what the yellow orb flying toward him is, and immediately defeats the girl because, no matter the situation, she should never have thrown a magical circle. Suddenly, 2 more boys from Logan Jr.'s group appear behind him, aiming to attack with their fists. But Kim Joo-hyuk is fully prepared, gripping his powerful sharp sword firmly. With a single decisive strike, he takes them both down without hesitation. The cowardly boys are left writhing in pain and agony after being hit squarely. Kim Joo-hyuk then eliminates the heroes effortlessly, relying solely on his strategies. He immediately starts thinking about heading toward the center of the Great Forest, concluding this action-packed and thrilling chapter. Now we're in Valhalla's grand monitoring room, where the announcer wonders how everything had unfolded so quickly. Kim Joo-hyuk had finished the battle in less than 23 minutes, most of which he spent exploring the area. According to the man with the mustache, this would disrupt the day's schedule, posing a significant problem. Lee Sang-hyul remarks that according to the rules, they could begin the next trial immediately if there was enough time. The next test would take place in the Great Forest, and Valhalla's assistant chief sought approval to speak with the other teachers to proceed. The competition's coordinator requests that they inform him of their decision, which they affirmatively agree to do. Lee Sang-hyul reflects that Kim Joo-hyuk is both fearsome and cunning, likely having inquired about this possibility because he knew such situations could arise. He and his close friend Jack Rover begin to leave the area. The leader of the heroes agrees to proceed with the trial, but notes they still need to speak with the White Lotus instructors. He finally became convinced after watching the group battle and believed the outcome wouldn't change even if the tests were postponed. Now he understood why his friend had referred to Kim Joo-hyuk as a true warrior monster. Lee Sang-hyul acknowledges all those words shared by his friend. The two then decide to speak first with the White Lotus group leaders, concluding this chapter's partnership and camaraderie section. Now we're in Valhalla's team rest area. The troublesome girl contemplates taking the initiative, considering the teacher had made her the group leader, but in the end she hadn't done anything useful. Moreover, she had lost to Choi Arin in the individual matches the previous day, likely because the girl had trained with Kim Joo-hyuk. At that pace, she would definitely fall behind, but she was determined not to let that happen. She considers setting aside her pride and asking Kim Joo-hyuk to teach her all his impressive tricks and techniques. Suddenly, someone arrives, calling the student representatives from the academies. He announces that the next day's survival test in the labyrinth had been moved up by a day and would now take place that same afternoon at precisely 1 p.m. without delays. Choi Erin thinks that things happened exactly as Kim Joo-hyuk had predicted while the announcer instructed the organization of groups for the final evaluation. But suddenly, the protagonist declares he has something to reveal to his group. He immediately announces that he would go alone to the center of the Great Forest and that the rest of the team would be on their own. But if they had any problems, they could call him, leaving the annoying little girl stunned by this additional individual match involving the prodigy boy. She thought they had already won the 2 previous trials, so they just needed to avoid getting the worst score in the final test. Even if it was a survival challenge in a labyrinth, the center of the Great Forest was more about the environment itself rather than any major concerns with monsters. Kim Joo-hyuk was slightly confused by all of this, and the girl also wanted a cool nickname. Thus, this tense preparation for the trials in that feared and dangerous place concluded. Now, we are at the center of the Great Forest, specifically at the labyrinth's gate. The announcer informed everyone that the students had reached the final test of the competition, survival in the dreaded labyrinth. Everything was quite similar to the previous evaluation, with the audience able to watch events through a holographic screen. Before the test began, the commander gave some warnings about the labyrinth, specifically regarding the trial's content and evaluation criteria. The center of the Great Forest, where the day's evaluation would occur, was a location shaped by enormous trees, as its name implied. Inside, there was a labyrinth unlike any other, a unique environment where it never stopped raining, with low-level monsters and few threats. The rain and thick shrubs were the real challenges to survival. The trial's content focused on how well someone could survive. When the students entered the labyrinth, their conditions would be assessed, and after 5 hours, those least affected would receive higher scores. Combat between groups was prohibited. Suddenly, after all these explanations, the story shifted to the abandoned warehouse of Valhalla. Someone arrived informing the vigilance that the students had entered the dangerous forest. It was Shinja Samsul Olia promptly responded to them. There seemed to be some magic blocking their access to the labyrinth's main gate, maintained by 2 individuals, according to the group leader. The man said they would need to deal with the dew first. Suddenly, an impressive purple portal opened, and the trio immediately disappeared, teleported away. A screen full of flickering and darkness appeared abruptly afterward. Watching the battle, Lee Sang-hyul wondered what that could be. The monitoring cameras in the forest's center were all failing simultaneously. As a result, the students in the labyrinth could face problems, so all the teachers gathered decided to enter the forest, according to the master instructor. Everyone began running toward the trial area. Lee Sang-hyul arrived, exhausted and out of breath, shocked by what he saw in front of him. Everything there was utterly destroyed and collapsing, leaving him confused about what had happened. Now the story takes us deeper into the feared and dark Great Forest. Logan Jr.'s group was standing still, thoughtfully considering their next steps to win the trial. Suddenly, one of the team members called the leader. He reported that the member Isabella wasn't feeling well. She retorted, saying she was fine but had gotten too wet at the entrance to that gloomy and dubious place. Logan Jr. responded, warning that if she developed hypothermia, she would be immediately eliminated, and he wanted a good score for the group. He then decided to build a basic shelter to avoid the rain, instructing Melissa to collect the largest leaves while the others gathered sturdy branches for support. Meanwhile, he would level the ground and dig a deep hole. Suddenly, a horrifying and grotesque figure appeared, telling him he would die quietly without screaming or panicking. The boy stared at him with a look of sheer despair and fear. The horrifying man informed Alia that the boy wasn't Kim Joo-hyuk, and she responded that she had transported them to a source of strong magic, but had only found this boy. Logan Jr. wondered who these brutish and ugly people were, seemingly intent on ending the prodigy boy from Valhalla. Moreover, their dark magic had emanated from a sphere, revealing what they truly were. The boy quickly concluded that this sinister group was a band of terrifying villains. The woman told the man that there were no witnesses around, so he could kill them quickly, to which he responded affirmatively. Logan Jr. became furious and enraged with these accursed wicked villains. He charged at them, yelling that the school competition wasn't a place for worthless, worm-eating scum. The grotesque and horrifying man grew irate at the boy's words. He demanded to know who the boy was calling accursed, ending this chapter tensely with the expectation of an epic battle ahead. The two were staring at each other in silence, one behind the other. Logan Jr. was stunned, wondering how that loser had appeared behind him. The malicious figure mocked him, telling him to look forward to understand what was happening. Suddenly, at the same moment, he also appeared in front of the prodigy boy while still standing behind him, moving quickly. Logan Jr. couldn't comprehend it, as it seemed to be 2 versions of the same person. The bizarre man confirmed the boy's suspicion, explaining that it was called duplication while attacking him mercilessly. The boy fell face first to the ground, completely unconscious and defeated after the attack. The woman asked her partner if he had killed him outright, and he replied that he would let him bleed out slowly until his complete death. Suddenly, a voice was heard, making them tense and surprised. It was the girl from Logan Jr.'s group calling for her skilled and prodigious leader. The woman quickly ordered her partner to prevent the witness from seeing any more, and he replied that he would deal with everyone immediately. He asked if it was okay to use the disguise immediately, and upon receiving confirmation, he acknowledged and rushed toward the defenseless and weak target. Thus, we end these tense and terrifying scenes of this chapter, which promises to be exciting. Kim Joo-hyuk was running through the testing area, wondering what that was all about. The panel spoke about the center of the Great Forest being the home of the Madagaiga Rona, also noting that certain conditions could only be met when a checkpoint existed. Kim Joo-hyuk was confused about there being a residence in that location, as you could only see bushes and giant trees everywhere. Suddenly, he encountered a blonde girl standing directly in front of him. She was completely desperate and upset, denying everything she was seeing. All of her teammates were likely dead on the ground, bleeding profusely and utterly destroyed. The vigilant woman seemed irritated that there was yet another witness, while the man commented that so many people showing up was quite annoying. Suddenly, he realized there wasn't just one person but two, and the second individual was undoubtedly the primary target, Kim Joo-hyuk. The woman recognized this, and the man said the target must have heard the screams and rushed over, which was why he never killed them immediately. Kim Joo-hyuk was confused to learn he was the primary target of such a creepy and hideous group. He carefully observed his surroundings without uttering a single word. Logan Jr.'s entire group, including himself, was lying on the ground in front of him, almost dead and bleeding excessively. Kim Joo-hyuk called out to the blonde girl, ordering her to try to stop her friend's bleeding while he dealt with the intruders. He figured the first-year students from the hero's clan were still alive at that moment. The protagonist thought they had been intentionally struck in a way that wouldn't kill them immediately, leaving him puzzled about why they were left to bleed to death. He then addressed the wild dogs, saying they had ruined his mood and demanding an immediate explanation. He also asked how they had invaded the area and declared he would eliminate them quickly and discreetly. The man responded with insults, telling him he didn't understand his current situation being trapped in that infernal, dangerous, and dark labyrinth. He explained that his group had destroyed the only passage into that place, and the same had happened to the surveillance drones. Even if the teachers discovered it, they wouldn't reach the area fast enough to save everyone there. Since they had completely destroyed the gate, it would take at least an hour to clear it and enter the place. Kim Joo-hyuk thought about the limited time he had. In that cursed forest, with the unending rain, he had only an hour to find his desired objective. The horrifying man was confused, not understanding what the boy was muttering at that moment. Then he lunged at him, aiming to kill him mercilessly. With his extremely sharp and deadly knife gripped tightly in his fists, he advanced, preparing to deliver a strong and powerful strike. But just as he was about to land the blow, Kim Joo-hyuk vanished from his sight. The man was baffled by what had just happened, wondering where the prodigy boy had disappeared to so quickly. Suddenly, someone called out to him quietly. It was Kim Joo-hyuk himself, launching an attack intended to ensure his opponent's painful and merciless demise. He then delivered an extremely strong and powerful blow to the face of his grotesque and horrid enemy, sending him flying far away, passing by the female members of his group at an incredible speed. He finally crashed into the ground with a deafening thud. The girls were stunned by what they had just witnessed before their eyes. Suddenly, the impressive Kim Joo-hyuk appeared behind them without them noticing immediately. He swiftly landed another precise and masterful blow on their backs. The girls felt the impact with intense pain and agony evident on their faces. They collapsed face first to the ground, unconscious, just like their brutish companion. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately ordered the blonde girl to use her own magic to heal the severely injured. But he added that if she couldn't manage it, there were some Valhalla students to the west of the area. She replied that before asking for help, she would try to do her best. Suddenly, the cursed villain got up, groaning in pain from the blow he had received. He was very angry and frustrated by what happened to him. Kim Joo-hyuk commented that the guy's companions were incredibly fragile and weak. The man gripped his sharp knife tightly, visibly enraged by the protagonist's words. Kim Joo-hyuk asked the man before killing him who had ordered him to target him. The horrifying man responded that he wasn't an amateur and thus refused to reveal such information. Kim Joo-hyuk found this very odd since the other guys he had encountered confessed immediately. The weakling seemed momentarily confused by the boy. He quickly devised a strategy to surprise him using his duplication ability. But when he put the plan into action, it failed miserably. He was stunned by how Kim Joo-hyuk had dodged the nearly undetectable attack. Kim Joo-hyuk remarked that his enemy was being cowardly by attacking from behind. He then attempted to deliver a real surprise attack himself, leaving his opponent dumbfounded, holding his pitiful little knife. Kim Joo-hyuk then landed a powerful blow square in his face. The hit caused him unbearable pain in his face. The protagonist then addressed the brutish bald man. He asked one last time who had given the order, only to receive a mocking response. Considering this answer, Kim Joo-hyuk informed him that he would keep hitting him until he felt like talking. He quickly began swift movements with his sharp sword, striking his horrifying enemy with full force, sending him flying far away and concluding this chapter of the story. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time.